I'm on mute, sorry.
It's okay.
I think it auto mutes, so I think it was, not helping me.
Well, welcome, and thank you for submitting your resume and for being willing to be part of our ad hoc committee. I was wondering if you wanted to tell us a little bit about why you're interested in volunteering, or what your particular passion for this project might be.
Yeah, well, I initially had expressed interest in the economic review, and then I was approached about the ad hoc, which actually is of more interest to me than the economic was, if I'm being honest. So it was pretty advantageous that I guess the one wasn't meeting or conducting business, I guess. So the ad hoc, I think as I think you guys know, because this is what you do, it's very important to the community what happens to resources that or land and how we develop it. The balance is that it's sometimes difficult to have things be not a drain on the community in terms of financially speaking, et cetera, and how we can have things that are good for the community and have it still not be profitable, but be advantageous potentially financially to the township. So this is actually this fits things that I like to do in terms of financial analysis, et cetera.
Yeah, you're very impressive resume. So thank you for volunteering. And with that, I'll ask if any of the other supervisors have any questions. James, you look like you're ready to go. You have a question there?
Always ready to go.
Okay.
How you doing?
How are you?
Good. So yeah, looking over the resume, it looks amazing, as Chair Blondie was saying. So do you have any ideas or vision? I mean, I assume that you've been a Lower Makefield resident for a while and that you've kind of grown up around these properties. Is there a vision for these, or?
Yeah, I grew up in Bucks County. I've lived in Lower Makefield since 2001. So yeah, so I've been in Pennsbury my whole life, I should put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the ad hoc community, I have a lot of ideas on how there are things that could be great for the community and not bad. But I think maybe I have a question for you and answer, and I apologize in advance for that. But I think the ad hoc committee is going to evaluate items that are brought to the committee, correct? Or is it supposed to be?
No, so yeah.
No pun intended. It's supposed to be ad hoc that we come up with things, or is it more
there's
that?
there's definitely a format of township assets specifically,
Correct. Okay.
Bricks and mortar type buildings in the township that are in certain or stages of disrepair that need to be looked at and analyzed as far as for highest and best use, and how we can integrate them into kind of the master plan of Lower Makefield and kind of keeping that same type of feel of what they were.
And keep the community happy about the choices that we made with them.
Correct.
Right. So that's the balance, right? There's a lot of space discussions in Lower Makefield about what we're letting people do things to, et cetera. And I don't, I think that's, yes, I can see the balance being very challenging. That you have to balance that it can't be a financial drain, but then it also has to be something that folks want. So
correct. But that's all I had.
Things cost money, whether people want to admit that or not, right?
Well, I do appreciate you putting your name in the hat, even though you were looking at something else. I do appreciate it, because we need people with your type of mindset. So thank you so much for applying.
Yeah, it looks like it's a fast pace that you guys want some budgetary things for 22 by September of 21. So if it's,
I believe so.
Is that still?
Oh,
yes.
that's a
Okay. All right. So that's still the time frame.
with the preliminary report. We're probably going to be flexible with, but the first quarter for next year, the report, I think we're going to have to figure it out.
I think it was just the budget items. Like, I guess if there was any budget considerations for the committee in 22, right? I think that's.
You'll be a great fit for that.
Did you have a chance already to talk? Would you like to?
I
Are you
I
good
think
already?
James, I think James
Then-
very good at the questions.
Then
I'm just
John?
happy you volunteered, sir.
So Sarah, thank you so much for agreeing to volunteer. It's certainly an important committee. Anytime someone with supply chain management experience comes in, I'm like excited because that's a particularly, it is a unique and special skill set. Actually, I'd like to reverse it and allow you to ask me questions because you probably have some questions about how this will operate and wonder about that and get some perspective as to why things are the way they are. So I'd actually let you reverse it. I don't, that way, if you've got questions, things you want to have a perspective of why you think it's, why things are the way they are in terms of process and timing and things like that.
Well, I don't know if I know all the ins and outs to ask every question. I guarantee I'll probably get to them all, but I think my initial question is, and I'd ask James this as well. I think if the ask of the committee is that you're going to give a property, we evaluate it for the best use and fit for the township that could potentially not, that could have, instead of being a building that is looking at this point to just cost money, is there a way it could maybe potentially not cost money, but also not be maybe a shopping mall, right? Like, and I'm being flip here, but in that regard, like, I think it's to keep things in their original intent, but have them be something that's advantageous on both sides. Is that
Well,
the intent of this?
Yes, but I think with each asset, you have to ask yourself a few questions with the asset, which is, A, should the township own it or continue to own that asset? Could it be in private hands and do better in private hands? If it should remain in the township's possession and the property is not in current use, what would be the best use of that property? And I think one of the challenges with this is people are jumping to thinking through what the solution is for each property and figuring out, okay, what's the highest and best use of it? I think that's hard for us to have a good grasp of right now. Real estate markets in general are fascinating because they're an interesting dynamic. We've got personal residential real estate going through the roof, right? We have commercial real estate, and some segments are a mess and other areas are crushing it. Like, so, and the question for some of these properties is they're unique, right? What could they be used for? And maybe the short term is they can't necessarily be used for something, but they should be restored to X position so they don't further deteriorate. Or maybe they shouldn't exist in the current framework and they should be raised and the property should be to where it is. Those are all options that need to be considered. And I think from that perspective, as you look at this, there's a lot of elements that go into this. One is sort of what's the financial cost, the holding cost of this, what's the restoration cost of the real estate, what's the potential revenue opportunity, what's the historic significance of a property. I'll give you an example like the Slack House, which is on Makefield Highlands Golf Course, is an interesting property and could be used for certain things and does have some degree of history to it, right? And those are the kinds of balances and come up with ideas around that. I would be, because I don't have the answers here on each of the properties and I've given some thought to them over the years, I would say keep an open mind on all options and think about which options may be sequentially rational but not optimal, like something you do short run to keep things in, to work where they are.
There's a 5 and a 10 year potentially.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a 10 and 20, depending on how expensive we're talking about.
Right. Well, and the other thing too is the expense on some of them may not, there's an expense to get something in a condition where it doesn't further deteriorate versus total restoration where, it's on the Stone Home Restoration Show, which a friend of mine's show was on last night. I haven't seen it, but
I've reached out to them. So far, they're not interested.
so those are the kinds of things to think about. And I just want you, like I said, keep an open mind about that. Don't hesitate to ask perspectives and, see what you get from folks. And there are a lot of people on the committee already with some good ideas to bounce things off of, so.
I guess that was one of my next questions. How many folks are you putting on the committee?
I think the idea was 7.
Okay.
You're number 5. You would be number 5.
Okay. And then is there a list of properties is there like a 1 to 10 and you guys have rated it on level of importance that needs to be addressed, or is it they're all addressed at the same time?
No, there's definitely a list.
Okay. Okay. I didn't mean it in a bad way. I just meant, is it kind of like you want us to kind of look at all of them, or there's 3 that just have to get done immediately type of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Part of the role of the committee will be to assess the list and help prioritize on any number of criteria, cost, timing, condition, to help rank those out in terms of how they should be focused on by the board.
Okay.
And if you were selected for that committee, we'd make sure we'd get you access to, we have like 3 separate reports outlining scope of repair, cost,
Okay.
what have you. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe they change in order depending on the opportunity that could be available to the property as well, right?
Right. In fact, we're arranging tours, so if you're on the committee. you can
And we're getting on a TV show, right? Is that what I heard too?
Yeah.
do
I think
reality TV.
Okay. Sounds
Right.
lovely.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions, thank you, Sarah. It's time for us to start our regular meeting. So you will be hearing from us shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you for everyone's time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay. Everyone, to the July 21st Board of Supervisors meeting. This meeting is called to order, and with that, I'd ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Suzanne,
Yes.
before you do roll call, since you asked and then I failed you. So if people still can call in, it would be the same instructions. You dial 646-558-8656. We have the meeting ID number of 230-936-1902 pound when prompted. And so for people calling in, we do have people here in the audience. Every item that is being considered will have a public comment, and then there's a separate public comment section. Having asked the chair the question this before, I think the order of events would be if there was someone here that was here on at the township building, they'd have the opportunity to come up and speak first. Then we would go and ask if there was anybody who has dialed in for any public comment subsequent to that. That's all.
Thank you. With that, I will call the roll. John, are you here?
Present.
Thank you. Fred?
Here.
James?
I'm present.
Dan, have you logged in? Okay, then with that, I'm here. We have a quorum, so we can start the meeting. And as our manager had said, the public comment on agenda items will be taken as each item is discussed. If there's someone in the audience, we'll go to them first, and otherwise we'll go to the line. Agenda item number 4, COVID update.
I have no update unless there's any questions.
Okay, then with that, community announcements. Do you want me to try to read them, Monica? Try to play the role of Monica? I don't. You're Monica.
Sounds very frenzy.
Okay, as far as community announcements go, this is a reminder during this portion of the agenda, youth organizations may call in to make special announcements. You can contact the township at admin@lmt.org to be added to the list or the agenda. As far as Parks and Recreation go, on the agenda, it does say we have digital opportunities. We, however, do not have digital opportunities any longer. Everything is in person. So that is exciting. We have yoga, art, Zumba, summer camp, but there's still some weeks available if you'd like to sign up. And you can go to lmt.org. The link is on the agenda. The pool is open. August memberships are for sale. So if you're interested in signing up, you can still do that. You can contact or go to lmt.org for registration information. Plans for Community Day are in the works. We are organizing. We already have a number of vendors and food trucks all lined up. Activities are all lined up. So we'll start sharing the schedule with you. We just put out our first social media blast about it. So very excited about that. And if you are a vendor or a sponsor interested in the day, please give us a call. And that's all I have for today. Oh, and I did forget. I'm sorry, Suzanne. We do have the 5K color run coming up at Makefield Park. Registration is open. So please sign up today and visit lmt.org on the rec page to get the information for that. And that's all. Thank you.
Do any supervisors have anything they'd like to share? Okay, well then we are on to agenda item number 6, consider approval of the minutes from June 16th, 2021. Is there a motion? I'm sorry. Yes, hold please. So Lee, the rules of engagement still apply. If you'd like to make public comment, please queue up. And then since you are the only person who would like to, if you say you do, then you must.
Lee Padowitz, 247, do I have to repeat this later?
Yes.
All right, 247 Truman Way in Yardley. Just wondering, with this community day, has Philadelphia Electric been contacted to show up and give a little show or a booth or something?
Monica, have you had a chance to reach out to Pico to ask if they'd like to have a booth at Community Day? So Lee, sadly enough, is not with Pico, although he did have his career in electricity out on Long Island. But I think she's saying, Pico's welcome.
All right, so you wouldn't, like with the Electricity Reliability Committee, we're getting a dialogue, we feel a good dialogue with Pico, and maybe, and I know they've come in the past. It's not like.
You think they've come to Community Pride Day
Yeah, I
instead of a
think so.
booth?
A few years ago, I think they came. So, I mean, should I reach out to them or should somebody else reach out to them?
Monica, are you in contact with all the vendors that you've been in touch with the past? Vendors being, maybe the wrong word, but like if somebody's been there before, you've emailed them and.
I think the EAC was in contact with them before.
The EAC was in contact with Pico?
So,
I know the EAC is talking about having a booth.
yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if you
We'll see what we can do. Okay, welcome, Dan.
Suzanne, on that particular issue, there was a young woman from Pico who attended an EAC, one of the seminars that they have, and I believe she also attended Community Pride Day, had a little booth and gave out some Pico stuff. This was a few years ago, so I think the EAC probably has a contact.
So Monica said she's reaching out to all prior vendors, so got it covered.
Okay.
Right, so back to agenda item number 6. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from June 16th?
So moved.
Thank you, James.
I'll second.
Thank you, Fred. Is there any discussion from the board? Any public comment? I'm going to go with on the line.
No public comment on the line.
Thank you. Then with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Great. The motion carries 5-0. Agenda item number 7, treasurer's report. Fred?
Okay, for the June interfund transfers of $772,842.09, I make a motion to approve the transfers.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
James? Any discussion from the board? Any public comment? Any on the line? No public comment on the line. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0.
And I make a motion to approve the warrant list, $2,747,028.80.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Is there any discussion? Any public comment? No public comment? Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Agenda item number 8, the 20-year 9/11 commemoration update. Thank you, Monica.
I have some slides for this. Dave, do you have them or can they be pulled up by Kyle? All right, great. Thank you. Oh, they're there. They're behind me now. So we've been meeting for the 9/11 20 years later commemoration ceremonies. We're starting to get more regular as we're meeting, but we have gone over a few things and there's some things that we've updated. I want to make sure that the board is in the loop as we move forward. So we're going to review some of the things, look and feel, messaging, invites, signage, that type of stuff. So on the next slide, you'll see the logo that we decided on for the 20-year I'm trying not to use the word anniversary because I know it's hurtful to some. So I'm sorry if I say it by accident. But the commemoration logo. So we're trying to pair our local feel with the fountains in front of the towers to just remember, what it's all about, that, we're all unified, we're all together. If you look at the next slide, this is kind of just reviewing what the look and feel will look like. Now, some of the words may change on the flyers and that kind of thing, but we're trying to get things out by the end of this week so we can really market and educate the community about what's going on. So as you look at this slide, you'll see kind of what a poster or banner or sign may look like. Some of this, if we have signage on the side of the road, it might be a little simpler, just less text and, more just larger in comparison. And if you can see the next slide, the next 2 slides are the front and back of what a postcard or an personal invite might be. So if we're an invitation maybe to family members or some people participating or who have participated for many years might receive this at home in their mail. So if you look at that, the next slide is the back of what that will look like. So as you can see on this postcard very clearly, we have the 3 words that we're using, and it kind of talks about the entire day as we go through it. In the morning, we're going to be honoring the victims of 9/11. In midday, we're going to have a quiet time where we can reflect. And in the evening, we're going to discuss how we're all going to come together and move forward from 9/11 and unite. So unite is the word that we're using. So it's going to be honor, reflect, unite on everything as we move forward. So with that being said, on the next slide, you'll see we have some donations that we've already gotten for the day. Our biggest donation is from Mid-Atlantic Event Group. They're doing all AV and sound, lighting, everything that we need for the day. We're anticipating that there could be a few thousand people there because it is a weekend and the 20th year later. So we just want to make sure that we have everything covered, that it's very safe. I know the chief has had some meetings with the committee to discuss safety and security and what that will be like. So Mid-Atlantic Event Group will be providing everything for that, which is really fantastic. Great donation. Shady Brook Farm has, they've opened their doors to us. Anything that we need to decorate for the day, they're going to give us. So all the flowers, bales of hay to prevent trip hazard, anything that we need for that day, they're going to deliver and provide that for us at no cost. And then we're creating walls of reflection. So through the 2 weeks leading up to the event, we have some volunteers who volunteered to build it, and Lowe's is going to donate materials at cost. So we're very excited about that. So those are some of the donations. If anybody's interested in chipping in any way, please feel free to contact me directly, monica.t@lmt.org. And then what we need from the community is on the day of the event, there's a lot of setup, tear down, moving parts. We're going to need about 50 volunteers for setup in the evening, 50 volunteers for tear down in the evening. We're going to need ushers, and we may need some other support throughout the day, as the committee might determine throughout the time. I'm going to create a sign up genius like I have in the past. So as these opportunities present themselves, if anybody's interested in participating, we would be interested in them signing up. And then, we had some layout discussion. This just kind of shows a map of the park from above. The next slide is a map of the park from above, and just kind of shows like the whole big picture of where we're going, the whole ceremony is going to take place. And we're fine tuning the agendas. We have a lot together already. A lot of our speakers we've been in touch with. We have timelines and a lot of logistics we're working out. So as that more comes together, I'll come and just give you updates as time goes by. And I'll be putting it out to the public. And then the last slide, if you go, I think it's maybe two slides. Oh, no, this is it. This is the timeline for the day. So around 8 a.m., we'll start the morning ceremonies, which will mark the timeline of the chronological timeline of the events of 9/11. In the middle of the day, around 12 to 3, we're going to keep it completely quiet at the park. So anybody who wants to come and reflect during that time, we're just, we're trying not to do any setup during that time frame. And then at 7 p.m., we'll start the evening ceremony. And that should be about 45 minutes long. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Monica, when you talk about volunteers, I'm assuming you need, more older, let's say high school and above mostly, because I'm thinking about what scout troops are out there that are going to want to get involved, and how we can really access all levels of the community to help. So is that a fair statement that you really want?
Yeah, I would say about high school and above for setup and tear down, but there may be other opportunities that come about. I know we had some younger scouts help last year with candles. We've had scouts help with flowers and that type of things, which we may be able to, utilize younger volunteers in that way.
Okay, so we could have like any of those leaders reach out directly to you rather than sign up on Signage Genius and maybe take up spots that aren't appropriate for the.
That is correct. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
Suzanne, I just want to say that Monica and the committee is doing an amazing job with this. It's a huge undertaking, and the amount of work that Monica and I know a couple of the other committee members are committing to this, especially with the slogan. I think it's when I first heard it, I thought it was spot on. So I just wanted to tell Monica I appreciate her work on this.
Thanks, James.
Still feel like there's a Hawaii tan joke waiting to be said. Waiting. Dan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted, Monica, obviously you guys have all put in a lot of hard work here, and it's weird for you to look at me on the screen to your side. But I don't care. I'm just wondering, is there anything that you need from us to help you move ahead with anything at all? Any direction, or are you guys pretty squared away and just rolling through?
We're pretty squared away at this point. If there's anything that you want to see that you're not seeing, I'd be glad to hear that. But I think the committee is doing a great job, and I feel good about, how things are going. We're flowing, and it's great. So it's good to see people come together and do that. So.
Great.
Well, thank you.
Is there any public comment? No public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Okay.
Great. Thank
Monica.
you. Thank you.
All right, so we're on to agenda item number 9. Andy, the engineer's report.
Yes, hello Supervisors. I'm here remotely from my offices in Conshohocken. You have in your packet my engineer's report. I want to highlight a few items. First of all, continuing with Memorial Park, the Memorial Park Improvements Project will begin. They're delivering erosion and sediment control measures to the site tomorrow. They'll be setting that up over the next couple of days, and I believe earthwork is going to start on Monday. We did work into the contract that There will be no construction on the Memorial Park site for the week before 9/11 and the week after 9/11, so that people from out of town can come in and visit the park and not be distracted by the ongoing construction within that area. Another item that's ongoing, or well, the road program is complete, is substantially complete. They're addressing some minor punch list items. I have a couple of agenda items that we can review for the status of the road program, but wanted to let everybody know that they are substantially complete, and that contractor is actually the same contractor that is working on the Edgewood Road mini roundabouts project. So they've moved on to that project. They've set up the detour. The detours are in place. So anybody attempting to come through Edgewood Road in the Schuyler Drive and Mill Road area, be mindful that take a few extra minutes to allow yourself extra time to get through the detours around those areas. They will be starting tomorrow, I believe, with the ADA ramps on the Schuyler Drive side. They estimate approximately 3 weeks to complete the mini roundabout on Schuyler Drive, and then they'll move over to Mill Road, and they estimate approximately 3 weeks to complete that, which should have everything substantially complete by before school starts at the end of August. So that's the schedule. Of course, everything's weather permitting, but that's the anticipated timeline. So moving on to the agenda items. Supervisor Grenier has a question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Andy, quick question on item number 11 on your engineer's report, the Quarry Road booster pump station for PA Water.
Yes.
I go by that a lot, and I'll say it's looking pretty good.
Yes.
Where it's in that, I see your notes say the same thing. The one thing I'm curious about, and this is something that Supervisor Blundy brought up when we were reviewing their design, were potential door treatments. I don't think they, kind of sort of making it look like a barn door to go with the rest of the design they have there. I haven't seen that in place, or if they're planning to do anything like that to kind of soften up that industrial door. Otherwise, the design looks great. I think they did a very good job.
Yeah, and I think they still need some landscaping items that, now's not the time to be planting landscaping. So there's still some outstanding items there. So I know that they're not complete on the site. I will talk with PA American Water about the door treatments.
Thank you.
Yep.
Chair Blundy, I just had a quick question too for Andy.
Sure, go ahead.
Just real quick, Andy, the Sandy Run, is that also shutting down sidewalks and bike paths along that trail? Somebody asked me about that earlier.
Shutting down, yeah. I mean, it's an active construction zone, so I don't want people believing that they can walk through there. They are putting in ADA ramps and adjusting the location of some of those paths and walkways around the mini roundabout at those intersections. So yes, it being an active construction zone, similar to any work that was done on the paths when the Hardistt Yardley or the Caddis development was being completed. Yeah, it's an active construction zone, and so people should anticipate that those areas be closed as well for periods throughout the construction.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if there's nothing further, I'll move on to the agenda items. First two agenda items involve the 2021 bike path reconstruction project. This project was complete. The contractor, so how we set up the bids is we base it on quantities completed or quantities installed in the field. Change order number 1 is required. It's in addition to the contract. When we initially set up quantities, this is for an adjustment of quantities for work that was completed. When we initially set up the quantities for asphalt, we measure the areas of the bike paths And then we multiply that by a 1-inch thickness over the entire bike path area. Because there were some undulations in the surface of the bike path, we have to maintain a minimum 1-inch thickness, because anything less than a 1-inch thickness would be have the chance to flake off or just not be structurally sound, both when placing it and in the long term. So that 1-inch thickness is a minimum. This is quantities that went in excess of 1 inch in certain areas because of undulations in the path, and we wanted to maintain a drainage slope across that path. So there is a positive change order on this project. We had an inspector on site. We've collected the tickets for the asphalt that was delivered to the site. So we're confident that the amount of asphalt that they're requesting payment for was actually delivered to the site and placed and is on the bike path. So with that, we're recommending change order number 1 for the 2021 bike path reconstruction project to Polaris Construction in the amount of $2,023.40.
I move that we approve change order 1 for the 2021 bike path reconstruction project to Polaris Construction in the amount of $2,023.40.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Thank you, James. Thank you, John. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising their hand.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Passes 5-0.
Next item would be to consider the pay application number 1. This is the first and final payment. All of the work has been completed. The punch list items have been completed. We've received all of the necessary paperwork from the contractor, and thus we are recommending pay application number 1 for the 2021 bike path reconstruction project to Polaris Construction in the amount of $31,183.40. So that would reflect the entire bid amount plus the change order that was just approved.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, John. Any discussion?
Andy, that 31 is basically 29 plus the $2,000 change order we just did, just to clarify.
That's correct.
Okay, so I thought you said.
Any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
So moving on to the road program, the first item is again to consider the change order number 1. This is for an adjustment of quantities that were used out in the field on the project. The project is substantially complete. There will be no more payments for any additional quantities. The only outstanding payment would be for retainage that we're holding while the punch list items are being addressed. Thus, the change order number 1 is a credit to the township as the quantities have come in under the bid value. So we recommend change order number 1 for the 2021 road program project to Harris Blacktopping, Inc. as a credit to the township in the amount of $6,608.91. I will say this, that because of the price of asphalt has gone up 25%, pretty much like every other product this year, since January when this project was advertised, the contractor was entitled to an additional quantity or an additional monies for asphalt in somewhere around $17,000. So in reality, we were approximately $23,000, $24,000 under budget on this project. But because this is a liquid fuels project, PennDOT requirements stipulate that the contractor is entitled to that additional money for the price of asphalt going up. So not to confuse things, but the total change order is still under budget, a credit to the township in the amount of $6,608.91.
I'll make
Moved.
a motion to approve change order number 1 for the 2021 road program project to Harris Blacktopping Inc. for credit to the township of $6,608.91.
I'll second.
Fred seconds it. Thank you, Dan. Is there any discussion? Any public comment?
No public comment.
All right, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thus, we were, for the road program, we are also processing pay application number 2 for the 2021 road program project to Harris Blacktopping. This would be in the amount of $537,444.78 as the work has been completed. We are recommending payment in that amount. As I stated earlier, we are holding 2% retainage on the project, which is roughly $12,000, slightly under $13,000. That's the amount of retainage that we're holding until the punch list items are complete. At this time, we're recommending payment for payment number 2 in the amount of $537,444.78.
Motion?
I move that we approve pay application number 2 for the 2021 road program project to Harris Blacktopping, Inc.
Your second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, John. Any discussion? Any public comment?
No public comment.
With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Great, motion carries 5-0. Okay,
Next item on the agenda is the Stormwater Management 2021 MS4 program update. We have a special guest from our office here. If we could bring Liz Coletti into the room. She will be assisting in the presentation.
Hello, I just got transitioned in from the waiting room.
Liz sent me a message earlier that her power was out, so hopefully things have been restored, Liz, and you can see everything and you're ready to go.
I am, it just came back about 10 minutes ago, so we're good to go.
Okay.
Thank goodness, it's too hot to not have AC. Okay, so I will just say when to move to the next slide then. And that's how we'll go?
Yep.
All right, cool. So you can go to the next slide already. So last year we gave a pretty in-depth presentation about the MS4 program and everything that entails. So I'm going to kind of push through a lot of those details so that we can get to the meat of the presentation today. But if anybody has any clarification questions, feel free to stop and ask. But this slide is a summary of the major pieces. You have the 6 minimum control measures, you have your pollution reduction plan, and then you have the pollution control measures. So if you go to the next slide, there will be a summary of where we were at last year when we gave the presentation. So we were in the process of updating things, or things hadn't even been started. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see where we're at this year. And everything has been updated. The majority of things have been completed to a degree. You can go to the next slide. This gets into the PRP. So last year, all the PRP stuff was in progress. Next slide. This year, it's been completed. And the following slide will show you our timeline for the submission. So we've been coordinating with DEP. We submitted a draft with the 2020 annual report. We received comments in 2020, and we had several meetings with them to kind of go over them, go back and forth. We are planning to do our final submission with the annual report, but prior to that, we're going to get one last okay from DEP before we go through the public comment period, which has to last for 30 days. So this is the township's official announcement that the plan is now open for public comment. And then at the close of that, we will address any comments that may need to be addressed and then include the final submission with the MS4 annual report. So as part of this submission, you can go to the next slide. We have to include proposed and completed BMPs to meet our reduction requirements for the sediment loading. So at this point in time, the township was able to take credit for a couple of detention and retention basins that were done as part of a few different developments. So this table at the bottom summarizes the credits that we were able to receive for those. It's just shy of 6,000 pounds. For the township to meet its overall requirements for the first 5-year cycle that we are in, we have to get to 156,000 and change of pounds of reduction. So we have a bit to go ahead of us. So if you go to the next slide.
Liz, can I chime in? The basins that we took credit for were only for BMPs that were installed since 2017 or
Correct.
finalized since 2017. So that's all that DEP allowed us to take credit for. So there was nothing that was completed before 2017.
Correct. And so we decided that it made the most amount of sense for the remaining proposed BMPs to reach the reduction values to be more of a BMP menu. So the amount of listed retrofits and projects, not all of them have to be completed in this 5-year cycle for the township to meet the requirements, but this provides some flexibility should we discover that one project versus another is going to be more difficult to implement or this or that. So all in all, the total amount of reduction for the proposed BMPs is 217,000 pounds. So it's about 60,000 over what we need, which is good. So that provides some flexibility. So the next few slides are going to kind of give a summary of the potential projects that could happen to meet the reduction requirements. So this first slide summarizes some of the projects that are up in Court Creek. And they're mostly just basin retrofits. Next slide. Here we've got the one stream bank restoration project. This one will be giving us a big chunk of our reduction requirements. This is slotted to give us 47,124 pounds of sediment reduction. And then we have one area for pervious pavement replacement in the parking lot for the Woodlands.
5 Mile Woods.
Thank you, Randy. Next slide. So this table summarizes all of those proposed BMPs and their load reductions, as well as high-level cost estimates for what that could be, just for planning purposes and for upcoming budgets. As I stated, not all of these projects have to be completed by the end of the current 5-year cycle, which ends in 2023. But we do have to get to the 156. So how we do that will be up to the township's discretion.
The current 5-year cycle ends in 2023, but the DEP is allowing us to go 5 years after the pollution reduction plan is approved. And it has not been approved yet, correct, Liz?
Yes, this is true. Yep.
So realistically, we have about 5 years from the end of this year.
Yeah, that's what they've been doing for individual permits. But Lower Makefield has a PRP, which does not require an individual permit. So whether or not they give us an extension on the time is not definite, but
Okay.
they've been lenient. So we can definitely push for it. Next slide. So this is just a general slide to kind of give an idea about what a retrofit means. So the majority of the existing basins in the township are detention basins. which means they are not designed to hold water. And then retrofitting them to retention basins where they would hold water would provide more water quality benefits, which is how you can get additional credits for the reductions to meet your requirements. Next slide. So the next two slides just kind of focus in on what our focuses were in this last reporting period, which just ended at the end of June. There was a major push for MCM4, which is construction site runoff, to try and increase our notices of violations to make sure we are promoting a culture of compliance in the township. So if you go to the next slide, we have a summary of the NOVs that were issued and the dates that they were issued for the different developments. Next slide. And then for MCM5, which deals with post-construction stormwater management. So this is basically ensuring that the township has mechanisms to capture that all of the BMPs within the township are being properly maintained. On the next slide, there's a summary of in 2020, we issued almost 50 different permits that had BMPs associated with them. And this year thus far, we've issued 30. And almost all of them, we have signed O&M agreements from the property owners to make sure that it's very clear who's responsible for taking care of them.
I'll just chime in here. These are mostly small projects that would not necessarily meet the requirements for rate control. So it's not like the big commercial developments. This is more focusing on, while we've done that and we have required operation and maintenance agreements for all of those, that's historically we have been doing that. This past year and a half, we've really focused on trying to establish a system where we're getting operation and maintenance agreements on the best management practices that are being implemented on individual residential lots where they are where they're exceeding the impervious area currently, and thus requiring a stormwater BMP to mitigate the runoff from that additional pervious area, and that we are requiring then a signed operation and maintenance agreement from the property owner, indicating that they would maintain that BMP in perpetuity.
Next slide. So one of the other upcoming compliance issues, by 2022, the township has to ensure that their stormwater ordinance is in compliance with the 2022 model that was published by DEP. So we are currently reviewing and we will let the township know if any adjustments need to be made to stay in compliance. And if so, we'll start moving through that process. Next slide.
Immediately, something that jumps out is the addition of a section for riparian buffers that are
correct.
Buffers along streams that.
Have they said what those will be, Andy?
I'm sorry?
Have they given any indication of what that offset would be? 50 feet, 100 feet, anything like that?
I think it's 50 feet. I mean, I think that our ordinance is pretty robust compared to some other municipalities, and so
yes, I would agree.
We may be already complying with it, but we have to look at the.
Okay. Sounds like they're just trying to match up with their floodway definition anyway.
Exactly.
Yes, pretty much. Yep. And then this slide gives an update on where we're at with meeting the pollution control measures. So in Lower Makefield, we have 2 different PCMs that we have to be in line with. There's pathogens for Neshaminy, and then there's priority organics for Martins Creek and Delaware River. And the priority organics have a focus for PCBs and pesticides. So the mapping efforts have been completed and the source inventory has already been completed. And then the follow-up investigation has just begun. So to give some clarity, the idea is that an effort was done to identify any potential source for these pollutants within these watersheds. And then there would be follow-up efforts to see whether or not those potential sources are indeed polluting, and if they are, coming up with a mitigation plan. And then in 2 years from now, we have to submit a report that provides a summary of what those findings were, and then what measures were taken to curb them. Next slide. So overall, the overarching mapping has been completed. We just have to budget for ongoing field verification. DEP is very aware, especially at the township level, that it takes time and money to get these completely field verified. So we do a focus of verifying the discharge points first, and then work our way out from there to verify where exactly the inlets are and the pipes, and get inverts and pipe sizes and things like that. So that'll be an ongoing effort that'll probably never end as development occurs, but we'll keep moving towards completion on that. And then we just have to move forward with actually constructing some of the proposed BMPs. We're going to have the EAC collaborate with the Arleigh Borough EAC for the investigation of the potential sources, since there's some overlap with our watersheds. And because Yardley was able to secure some grant funding for the Buck Creek watershed, so might as well make use of the volunteer power that we have there. And then, as stated, we may need to revise the stormwater ordinance. And then lastly, there is an animal ordinance requirement. Lower Makefield already has one, and we may just need to expand it because DEP is still working through the requirements for that ordinance, and I have not issued that yet. And then I believe that that's it. I think the last slide is just questions. Yep. Go ahead, Danny.
Thank you for that. And I will say, like, I was excited to see this one because this is what I've been doing for 25 years too. So this is interesting stuff. But for those watching at home that may not know what an MS4 is, it's a municipal separate stormwater system. PRP is a pollution reduction plan. So if you're not familiar with it, it's sort of the stormwater version of what we had to do with our sewer system. So our sewer system is basically what comes out of our drains into our pipes and goes to the sewer treatment plant. We have to address those pipes in that system, make sure it's up to speed. It's not leaking, infiltration, all that stuff that we spend a lot of money on and continue to do so. This is the stormwater side of that. So all the water that falls as rain and comes off our driveways and the roads and goes into the storm sewers, into the basins, into the streams, into the Delaware, that it affects the pollutant loads in our streams and rivers and wetlands and other aquatic habitats. So this is DEP requirement. Actually, it's a federal EPA requirement delegated to the state, which whenever a township like ours has a municipal stormwater system, we have to meet these guidelines. So it's not, as you saw, it's not an inexpensive thing. So from a budgetary perspective, it's another one of those things that we have to look at, as you've done, which I appreciate, starting to look at, say, a 5-year plan, so that we can be in compliance and still get these projects done and consider them in our budget, kind of like we did our 7-year sewer plan, where this is our 5-year-ish stormwater plan. So that's, and it's not cheap, so we got to look at that. Couple quick questions on that.
Dan,
as we
Dan,
yeah,
just we are getting adjusted to this new hybrid environment, and you started to speak. I don't know that they were actually done because I couldn't see anybody other than the presentation.
Yeah, I raised my hand and she said go ahead, so I was.
Well, she doesn't get to say go ahead, but thank you.
Oh.
But so if we are now, you guys, Andy, you're done with your presentation, correct? And so we're
Yes,
opening.
we are.
We're opening it now for comment from the supervisors, so just so that people following along understand what's going on. And so back to you now, Dan, so that we can hear your thoughts.
Well, I appreciate that. So a couple questions when we look at your presentation. Actually, your last couple slides are probably the nice summary at the end to speak around, I guess. There are several items that we have to address over the next 5 years. Sorry, trying to get there. From a mapping perspective, is that something? Do all of those inlets and pipes and et cetera, basins, do those need to be surveyed, or is this more of a visual inspection with a measuring tape?
I would say that our mapping system is in tune with the GIS system. So what we would mostly, we have a lot of the inlets, and so it would be going out there with like a GPS unit,
Okay.
and clicking on the center of the inlet, but then looking down in the inlet and identifying the size of the pipe, the material of the pipe, and which way the water's flowing. So
Okay, so it's not a volunteer action. I was looking for opportunities for volunteers to save money. It doesn't sound like one. That's really the only reason I was asking. On the retrofits or the other basin issues, right? We have what, 150-ish basins in town, plus or I
less than
forget
that,
the list we had a couple of years back. But in addition to the retrofits, I know we had the basin naturalization program that the EAC was pushing so hard for years. Does that give us any credit under this program these days, or no?
Well, as far as basin
Depends.
naturalization, it's really going to come down to the type of function that it is. So
Yes.
if it's a dry detention basin where it's got a low flow concrete channel in there, and we're just not mowing it, well, that's not really, it's still a dry detention basin. So in DEP's eyes, we're not getting additional credit for that. But I think that the reason that we've selected the BMPs that we have with the best, is that we are getting credit, and it is a relatively low cost, instead of, constructing a regional detention facility, which could be a very significant cost. We've selected the basin retrofits because it's an adjustment to the outlet structure, and possibly just adding plantings on the bottom. I think that's a relatively low cost comparatively to some of the other BMPs, and
A lot of bang for your buck, right?
that would also qualify as a naturalization program, and reduce the maintenance costs that Public Works is currently experiencing with having to mow all these basins. So I think that factored in to our decision on a lot of these BMPs that we.
It makes a lot of sense. On the stream restoration, and sort of related to stream restoration, it wasn't called out, but if we were to do, we see the riparian zone future regulation there, thinking about that, if we were to say, I don't know, we have, what stream is it that goes through Patterson Farm, for example, that is in certain areas mowed right up to the stream bank. If we were to plant trees there, would we get credit for that?
Yes, you would. Yep. There's a whole riparian buffer credit, and there's a general tree planting credit.
Okay.
I would say that
There's a requirement. You have to have at least 50 feet on either side of the stream bank for it to count. So that they have very serious requirements, but they usually give partial credit if you can't meet.
Okay.
That.
But that stream drains to the Delaware River.
I don't recall. I have to
And
check
so
that.
Ultimately,
looking at the key map here, I'm not certain I believe that's outside of the area where the
We have
impairment
impairments.
zone is. So
Okay.
a lot of the impairment zone is within the Neshaminy Creek watershed, and thus, we could talk to DEP, but to see if you could get credit for that, but they really want us to focus on the impaired streams.
Yeah, no,
that,
that makes.
I think that Jim's looked at that already since the EAC had targeted that for a planting project and whether or not we could get credit. And I think the answer is no, but anyway, moving on.
Yeah. So I guess the only thing.
Sorry.
No, it goes well with the dog picture I'm looking at here. Looks like my puppy, actually. That's why I laughed when I saw it. I guess the only thing I would say similar to that is it looks like you all will be obviously coordinating a bit with the REAC. They may have some ideas on certain basins because they've been looking at this for so long. They may know some stream areas that might be suitable for restoration work or riparian zone plantings that we might be able to get a little extra bang for a buck for those types of plantings if they're available, because again, they look at all the open space that we have in the town. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this, and I'd like to see what the EAC. I'd love to get the EAC's feedback too. Is really what I'm saying, but I appreciate the work you've been doing.
That's absolutely our intention. Is you have to start somewhere, and so giving this presentation and having a baseline for DEP purposes, that's where we had to start. But that's what this 30-day period for public comment is designed to do, is to get feedback so that we can so that we can improve the pollution reduction plan and have it be a working document that is bought into from the community.
Exactly. And then I guess my last question, I'm going back sort of your earlier slides. There was a bunch of stuff, sort of your timeline slides, I'll call them, that we have that says due in 2017 or due in 2018. Are we in, because we're 3-4 years out from that, are we in any sort of predicament because of that, or are we okay with DEP and just we're going to go from 2021 on and we're good?
No, we've been, since RVE came on board, we've been in constant communication with Krista Brown at DEP, and have been supplying her with submissions every time that she's asked for them. And we have agreed to an iterative process with her. Her philosophy is that it doesn't make sense to go all the way through the efforts of doing the calculations and going through public comment unless she's had a chance to approve your map. So our map has been approved at this point in time for our DEP designated outfalls. And now it's just a matter of kind of having this public comment period. But no, we are not in jeopardy of any kind of non-compliance issues or anything like that.
Okay, so we just, I guess, after we go through this public comment period, you get some feedback from the EAC, and we kind of work out the details of the plan here. That would, I'm assuming, we have to start implementing that probably next year. Right during next construction season. So that's something that looks like it would have to go into the 2022 budget starting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that starts in a couple months.
And the other thing that I'll say too is that this is very much considered a working document from DEP, and thus, for instance, the basins that have not been dedicated over at Regency yet, if they get dedicated within the next year, and there's additional volume that we can take credit for in those, we can certainly apply that to this pollution reduction plan, and thereby, lower the amount of pollutant load that we have to meet simply by just taking credit for stuff that is already done by developers. So,
yeah. So the way DEP,
I don't want to say that we're set in stone with this amount of money for the next 5 years. It's very much a working document that we can adjust based on situation.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And in the last couple of years, more and more of the grant funding that's coming out from the state is quite specific to these types of projects, especially basin retrofits. So that would be a major push for us. And it would most likely be trying to budget for the match money associated with those grants, not necessarily the full-blown cost of a lot of these projects.
It's good to know. Well, thank you very much for putting this presentation together and all the work you're doing. And I'll look forward in the next month or so to seeing where we go.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to having an approved permit.
Okay, any other supervisors have any questions? Is there any public comment? If you have public comment, please step up.
Chair Blondie, members of the board, Lee Pedowitz, 247 Truman Way. I should make a recording of that. No? But anyway, just a quick question. I noticed on one of your slides you used the acronym NOV. What's that an acronym for?
That is an acronym for Notice of Violation, and that's something that we issue if any active project is in violation of any of the township's ordinances, in particular related to erosion and sediment control or issues with their stormwater management.
I noticed there were a list of maybe what there were 5 to 10 listed there. What happened to those NOVs? Is there a monetary fee that's associated with them? Is there a deadline for them to be corrected?
There are deadlines for them to be corrected, but we only move to citations if they don't address the NOV within the time frame laid out in the issued notice.
Well, what's a typical time frame?
For usually if it's an active construction site, and it's an erosion and sediment control measure, it's within 24 hours. So I can tell you that there are some violations that we issued where the construction entrance was not working properly, and thus mud was getting tracked out onto township roadways. And so we notified the contractor, and they had a street sweeper there within 24 hours to sweep it up and address the issue. So that's our first notification is to notify the contractor that they're committing an erosion and sediment control violation. Then it's to monitor them to make sure that that's being addressed. And if not, we can always shut the work site down until the E&S violations are completed or addressed.
Because I noticed going down Dobry Road, my favorite road in the township here, that DeLuca, they were getting the road pretty dirty, but they had sweepers out there pretty quick. So I guess they were okay. But I noticed Caddis on that list, and I don't want to go into exactly how they violated it, but I just want to mention I noticed it. Also, just quickly, when you talk about the Regency retention basins, you haven't gotten credit for them yet?
They have not been dedicated to the township, and thus we can't take credit for them yet.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking is because when you go south of the Big Oak Road, there's a retention basin, and Toll Brothers is putting up some houses there, which is cutting down the volume of the retention basin. I don't know if you're aware of that, but how that might impact what the numbers you're looking at.
Yeah, we're aware of it. That's something that we have to calculate. We can only take credit for, the best management practices are implemented so to control the runoff from the development. So we're only allowed to take credit for the amount that is in excess of what is required for the development. So that's,
Okay.
on one of our slides there were a number of best management practices that were implemented, and we only have 6,000 pounds of sediment that is being reduced per year. That's because the rest of the basins or the rest of the BMP volume is addressing the additional development. The additional.
And just lastly, Andy, from what I've been hearing, Toll Brothers did a pretty lousy job of grading and drainage in our whole area. Is that being addressed, or we have to live with it?
I'd have to hear more specifics. I don't know about lousy job. I know that there's punch list items that are being addressed for drainage issues where it's down in between the houses, getting to inlets. There's, two sides. There's the north development where the punch list items are actively being worked on and completed prior to them paving putting on the final pavement for the roadways. Then on the south side, there's some issues with drainage behind the homes on Lavender Way, where they are implementing a plan to address those drainage issues too. So, yeah, they're all being addressed as they're being brought to our attention.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And just one thing, polychlorinated biphenyls are PCBs, not PBCs.
Yeah, I noticed that typo as well.
So did I.
Thank you very much. I like the cat.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
No
Any other-
public comment on the line.
Thank you so much. All right, well then with that, thank you both for the presentation. And we're moving along to agenda item number 10.
Thank you.
Project update.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you. I updated all of our projects. Andy has spoken about Sandy Run. I'm not sure if there's a specific question from the board on any of those items listed before you.
Any questions?
Terrific. So in the manager's report, we'll go through all of these items and I'll say.
Suzanne, I had a question.
Yes, Dan.
Sorry. Kurt, related to it's more related to the Bridge Commission. I just saw it because Woodside Bike Path. Do we have an update from those folks on any of the repair work they're supposed to be doing in the township, both near Woodside Bike Path area and over in the Mapleville area?
So the paving, Greg, the Public Works Director, is in regular contact. So I believe right now, the paving and that repair work is all part of the same time frame. And I believe they're going to be looking with all of that work in sort of probably late August and September as far as being out to finish all that stuff.
Okay, thank you. So start of the school year, basically.
It's okay.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then we're on to agenda item number 11.
So we'll go through these items and then I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that I want to give to the board that we'll talk about in a second. So item A is related to our project list, item F above it. We did bid out the project on Mirror Lake, which is a traffic, so for the public, so in case you get asked, I want to make sure I describe this, even though I've done it 100 times, that I do this properly. The project that is before you involves the installation of controllers, fiber interconnection and retiming of the existing traffic signals at the intersection of 332 and Mirror Lake Road and Route 332 and Creamery Road. The township had budgeted, this is entirely reimbursable through the Arleigh grant, $57,000 and as an estimated project cost, which would have been the maximum grant. We did receive 3 bids, with a low bidder being Armour and Sons at a cost $38,925. Staff is making the recommendation to accept that bid.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Fred got it. Will you be the second, Dan?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Before I open it to discussion, I'm going to go first. I thank you for this update, Kurt, and thank you to the CTC, which has been tirelessly pushing this project along. So yay, here it is. Any other discussion? Any public comment? With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Thank you, James. 5-0, motion passes.
Next item for you to consider, I did include the description of my manager's report, which just copied and pasted our sewage engineer, which is the motion to approve the Kaplan track planning module. This is for the construction of an individual on-lot septic system with the description provided by the board and requires a DEP sewage facilities planning module. for the property owner to put that in. We're asking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that you, Dan?
Yeah, it was. Sorry.
Okay. Can we change the view on the TV? Is that possible so we can see Fred and James? I'm sorry, Dan and James. Thank you. Oh, Andy too. I didn't mean to slight you, Andy. Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
Kurt.
Yeah, yes, Dan.
Sure. So this is someone asking to put in a septic system. I guess it's a little bit rare these days to go septic for new development versus public. What's unique about this? Or why is it going septic versus connecting to our system?
Boy, I can't answer that question of why that would be. There's Jim. Jim, do you have
Right
an
on
answer
cue.
to that question?
Yes, this property is not in close enough proximity to a public sanitary sewer system. Therefore, they need to be on septic.
Easy enough. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
So the next item we have is, as you're all aware, I think, since we've talked about it quite a bit, both the Big Oak Makefield Signal Road upgrade and the one you just approved are being funded through Arleigh grants. Both of those grants require an extension to them. The extension that we've applied for and has been approved is June 30th of 2022. However, the state has determined the extension itself requires a board approval. So I have those two motions before you. The first for the extension for Big Oak and Makefield Road. I would ask for your approval for that extension to be able to be granted.
I move that we approve the extension of the Arleigh Agreement number 06-11101A, Big Oak and Makefield Road to June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. And with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Next.
I move to approve the extension of Arleigh Agreement number 011102A, Yardley Newtown Road and Mirror Lake Creamery Road to June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Second. Okay, thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Any public comment? Nope. Lee, if you want to make public comment, please come up to the mic. They can't hear you.
I will amend my motion to read, move to approve the extension Arleigh Grant Agreement number 06-11102A, Yardley Newtown Road and Mirror Lake Creamery Road to June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, John. Do you accept that amendment, Dan?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Any public comment? Thank you. No public comment. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Motion passes 5-0. E?
Next item, the Bucks County Consortium bids out fuel. We use, this is a reminder, the bid itself is for the delivery charge. Interestingly, this year, as I had pointed out in my manager's report, and as a delivery charge per gallon, the delivery charge for gasoline is actually a negative amount from the low bidder, which means they would take that off of whatever the order would be. In both instances, the low bidder is Papco Incorporated. However, in the event that they couldn't deliver what have you, the use of that entire list allows us to shop off that list if the low bidder is not available. So I'm asking for consideration to improve the contract bid through the consortium.
I move that we approve the fuel contract bid through the Bucks County Consortium.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Any public comment? No public comment. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, I will remind the board that recently we did pass a motion. If you'll recall, our very attentive Public Works Director had observed in our winter services agreement with PennDOT. For the public watching, we salt and plowed Dolington Road from Washington Crossing to Taylorsville and Main Street, was for years improperly listed as 2.0 lane miles. Greg Hucklebridge had realized in the end in renewing that agreement that it was actually 7.1 miles. So you all had approved the change that PennDOT came out and confirmed. Now this is the extension of that agreement for 5 years. I outlined in my manager's report that starts with year one being a little over $8,000 and ends up being in year 5 about $8,700. That's reimbursement for the township for salting and plowing that road, and I'd ask for consideration for that.
I move that we approve the winter services agreement with PennDOT.
Is there a
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, John. John with the motion, Dan with the second. Any discussion? Any public comment? No public comment. I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Motion passes 5-0.
Last item for your consideration is a resolution to consider changing the fee for the tree fee in lieu of fee, which we adjust, which was outlined originally in the legislation to be done every 3 years, according to the CPI. Our planning and zoning director had computed what that compounded amount would be. As such, you have a resolution before you to increase the fee from $315 per tree to $347 per tree.
So I am going to be very happy to have that motion, but did you skip over G?
I'm sorry.
G on your, I'm happy to continue with H.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yes, let me go back. My apologies. So I won't repeat that when it comes up again. So just cut and paste that on the video. Item G is a resolution for your consideration, which is just tagging off of the agreement you just approved, which authorizes the manager to sign that agreement.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dan. Fred with the second. Any discussion?
And who was the prior signer before that? Has it always been the township manager?
Correct. It's
Okay.
basically, you all are approving
Yeah.
the agreement. You're just authorizing me to sign it.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye and raising your
Aye.
hand. Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
And now the tree thing.
I move to increase the tree fee in lieu amount from $315 to $347 per tree per the applicable consumer price index increase.
For a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, James. Any discussion? I'm going to lead with yes, EAC. We heard you. Here it is. Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, our regulation or our ordinance is strictly CPI. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm all for increasing this fee. I just in a real world scenario, I'm just curious what our real cost of installation truly is for a tree to make sure it's being covered when we have to do it.
I think that varies. That depends whether we contract it out or whether we buy something and we have staff do it itself. I don't think the fee would be far off on either calculation, at least what we've seen with what a contractor would charge or what the indirect cost would be for us to use staff to purchase, deliver, install, what have you.
And that's I'm all for increasing the fee. I just want to make sure it's enough to to cover those costs so that we're not, I believe John's favorite term on this tree thing is corporate welfare. So we're not subsidizing someone else's tree work. That's all. But I'm voting in favor of this for sure.
If it helps, Dan, that was not an issue raised by the EAC. They feel comfortable.
help.
We have some experts in this area on that group, and I think fairly confident they would have let me know that. Any other discussion? Any public comment? With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
James?
Oh, yes, that was an aye.
Great, excellent. Motion passes 5-0. Solicitors report?
Hold on one second. I'm sorry. I want to do my brief PowerPoint if I could, if you
Oh,
wouldn't mind. I'll be
I-
quick. I know it's not listed
I'm
on
so
there.
sorry.
Dave, could you pull that up for me, please? So give me 1 second and this is not a full and line by line review, but similarly to what we did during COVID, I want to give an update on, I think, a lot of the primary drivers of the budget and the things that we think about and talk about that will impact sort of where we are come budget time in only a few short months. Can you go to the next slide, Dave? So the budget that you all had passed had an anticipated fund balance start of $4,130,000 and change. And the actual start ended up being $4,564,000. I'm still listing that as fund balance, as you'll get when we have our audit is completed. The $3 million deposit for the sewer system for audit purposes will still be reported as a liability and not a revenue at this point, because obviously if the sewer sale did not go through, that $3 million would go back. However, for our calculations financially, I'm still listing it in that way for this purpose. But the net effect of that in the end is that our starting number was better than we had anticipated by a little over $434,000. Could you go to the next slide, Dave? So our transfer taxes is, one of those taxes that we have that could be volatile. Interestingly, this year early on was a bit slower than had happened in the last couple of years, but we've picked up like we normally do in May and June. And you can see our year-to-date number of $766,460 translates to a monthly average of $127,000. We'd need to hit 125 on a month-to-month basis throughout the year to hit that $1.5 million that was budgeted. Next line item, please. Or next slide, please, excuse me. So if we were to compare that, to put this in context, if you see where we are this year, we are doing better. It is more similar to 2019. As you all remember, in 2020, when everything with the pandemic happened, like March, April, May, were really low, and then it really came roaring back at the end of the year to get us that $1,508,000. Obviously, if you double that number where we are right now, we'd be at $1,532,000. So it looks like we're going to be coming in at a number comparable to what we've seen. Next slide, please. The other tax that we've talked about is local services tax. That's a $52 tax for anybody or for people working in the township. There are exemptions in there for persons making under like $12,000. They wouldn't have to pay it. We're a little bit lower than we've been in the last 2 years. Frankly, that number can vary quarter to quarter depending upon the timing of when that's paid. But in terms of where we see ourselves or where we'll end up, we're not far off from previous years. Next line item, please. Next slide, please. So our building permit number, our overall permit total for this year, building permits, every type of permit you can think of, we're probably going to be doing about 2,100 permits this year. And I'll just remind everyone, that's with the staff of about 3 that we're doing. So we've been very busy. You can see the June 30th total compared to what we've budgeted. So it's moving along. And we'll tell you, as well, I don't have the numbers for you right now, but you will see we brought in a new building inspections company. which is at a higher rate than what we were previously paying. And they have been very, very busy. So while we're going to be seeing more revenue, when the time comes for the budget on the other side, you'll be seeing expenses that will correspond with that. Can you go to the next slide, please? So if we look at 2019 and 2020, you can see where those year-end collections were, and we're right in line to be there as well. Next slide. I like to go with this because we started doing this last year with when the pandemic hit, with where we were. You know, if you remember in 2020, I have an asterisk by households paying through the face period because we extended it last year, as most Bucks County communities did, to the end of July from June 30th. So as you can see, this year through the face period, which was back to June 30th, we're actually running ahead compared to where we've been. As I said in my report to all of you, we budget with the estimation of 98.5% of households paying in that particular calendar year. We've done a bit better than that even, which is very, very good, but we budget at 98.5. We still think we'll be coming in to meet those totals for this year. Next line item, please. Or next, I keep saying line item, next slide, please. So the pool this year, you'll see, if you see on the right there, we budgeted $680,000 for memberships this year. Monica and I, we scaled the budget back to assume more like a 85% total of what we'd see. But you can see where we are with the year to dates. We're exceeding that number. We're at 831,000 classes and sales. We budgeted 125. This is when this starts ramping up, but you can see we're already ahead of that number now. For why that's also significant is the better off we do. We did have to budget some assistance from the general fund this year to subsidize the pool, expecting that we might have some struggles. So far, we're not seeing them. So this plays well with hopefully the general fund not having to assist as much as we had anticipated. Next slide, please. I wanted to cover this because I know this has been a question that the board has had, particularly with food and beverage, regarding where we were as of June 30th versus where the budget would have outlined the benchmark would have been. So you can see we're about $43,000 ahead. And I wanted to put that asterisk down at the bottom because I figured that's a natural question to ask, that for the full budget, we would, between revenues and expenses, say we're $162,000 ahead net compared to where we would hope to be with the budget with those numbers. So that is where we are. I'll continue to, obviously, my manager's reports. You can pull those slides down unless there's a question, if anybody has, that we need to go back to anything in there. No, so
Pull them down because I think I hear Dan.
No, it's actually on that last slide, but you don't need it up there. For the golf course, Kurt, we're plus 162, right, on the budget for 21. How does that compare, like you did with the other ones for the last couple of years? Just overall budget.
I at this point, I'm not prepared to. I would say it's better than last year, certainly. But as far as 2019 goes, I would. Having spoken to Mike and having spoken to his finance person, I can look to give you a comparison from June 30th. I wasn't able to put that together for this, but it was certainly better than 2020. And based upon my initial discussions with them, it would have been an improvement from 2019 as well, even though I can't give you that number at this point.
Thank you.
So I will obviously keep you all up to date. I'll start doing some other expenditure reviews on the other side of the ledger to give to you guys soon. And if there's any questions, obviously let me know. We do have the treasurer's reports that we provide you with the year to dates as we go. And that's all I have.
Are there any other discussion items from the board? Questions for Kurt? Is there any public comment? Please, Zach. Of course.
Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. if you may, I needed just a clarification. The starting fund balance for this year was $4,564,660. Does that include the $3 million advance payment from Aqua America?
It does.
Okay. So, and is it Essential Utilities or Aqua America? What is the name of this company that bought our sewer company? Our sewer. Is it Aqua America?
Yes.
Okay. Well, they're owned by Essential Utilities, aren't they?
I can't, I call them Aqua America. If it's
Yeah.
got a different title than that, I don't.
They are, Zach. They're subsidiary of Essential Utilities.
Well, I call them Philadelphia Suburban Water Company. That's where I come from.
So
That's
the
before
point,
your time.
but the point I was making when I first started.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying. So you're saying our fund balance was a little over $1 million if we didn't have that advanced $3 million, correct?
It would have been 1,564,660.
Okay, and that would not be at Safe Harbor.
My opinion is that a safe harbor. That would not bring with it certain, as an example, that would have brought with it another bond downgrade. That would not be deemed a number that Moody's would say is a harbor that would allow us to sustain the bond rating that we currently have.
Okay, thank you for that.
But I just say as well.
Yeah.
So what I was saying at the beginning was relative to that. It was why in the audit, when it comes out, which will be out soon, that $3 million will be reported for right now as a liability, because the potential to have to repay that will require that to be listed as a liability on our financial statement.
Well, my background in accounting, all I know is for every debit, there must be a credit. That's all I know. And one last question on the golf course. You're saying we're about 162,000 above budget in income. What is the debt service for this year, 2021, for the golf course?
I don't have the amount.
A ballpark figure.
I think it's about probably 1.3 or 1.4.
Hey, thank you very much.
Any other public comment? No public comment? Okay, then we are once again moving along to the solicitor's report.
Oh, sorry.
That's right. All right, first, we had an executive session tonight that began at 6:30, ended at 7:15 when the interview for the committee member occurred. All board members were present during all or most of the executive session. Litigation items, real estate items, contracts, and informational items were discussed at the executive session. Next, for the zoning hearing board, there are 4 appeals. I'll try to go through them rapidly. Number 1, appeal number 21-1922. Fred and Ashley Ritter have an application for the property located at 59 Glen Drive, Yardley, Pennsylvania, tax parcel 20-047-091. Applicants are requesting a variance from the Township Zoning Ordinance 200-14 capital B in order to install a concrete in-ground pool and patio. The applicant is requesting to increase the impervious surface from the existing 17.8% to 20.7%. Applicants are including some stormwater mitigation proposals as part of their application. It would be our recommendation to defer to the zoning hearing board on this unless there's a contrary sentiment from the board. Hearing none. Next, the appeal number 21-1923, Peter Chapman and Pilar Auto for the property located at 106 West Ferry Road, Yardley, Pennsylvania. Excuse me. Tax parcel 20-052-066. Applicants are requesting a variance from the Township Zoning Ordinance 200-6914C to permit the installation of a 4-foot split rail fence in the front yard where 3 foot is the maximum height allowed. It's my understanding that from the application, this is primarily to help keep their dogs in the yard. Based upon the application information we had before us, again, we recommend deferral to the zoning hearing board unless there's a contrary sentiment from the board. Hearing none. Third appeal, number 21-1924, Timothy and Abby Bevington are applying for the property located at 752 Sumter Drive, tax parcel 20-058-183. Applicants are requesting a variance from the Township zoning ordinance 200-23B, capital B, in order to install a paver patio. The applicant is requesting to increase the impervious surface from the existing 18% to 22.3%, where 18% is the allowable amount. Again, a stormwater mitigation plan is accompanying the application based upon basically the board's approach to most similar circumstances and applications. We would recommend deferral to the zoning hearing board again, unless the Board of Supervisors has a contrary sentiment. Hearing none, the final and fourth appeal before the board tonight, appeal number 21-1925, Derek Camp is applying for an application at 917 Lanyard Road, tax parcel 20-037-188, requesting a variance from the Township zoning ordinance 200-23 capital B in order to install an in-ground pool and patio. The applicant is requesting to increase the impervious surface from the existing 24.9% to 33.5%, where 18% is the allowable amount. Some stormwater mitigation is proposed. This is a rather large increase over the allowable amount. Not that it's unwarranted in some circumstances with stormwater mitigation, but given the circumstances, we are recommending the possibility of participation. But again, that's up to the board, and they'd have to make a vote or motion and vote on that tonight.
I'd like to make the motion to participate.
Thank you,
I'll
James.
second.
Is there a second? Thank you,
I'll
Dan.
second, Suzanne.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure, go
I
ahead,
can't
Dan.
see you, Suzanne, I'm sorry. Yeah, and obviously we have a lot of these, especially this year where we're going up in impervious surface. But it is not quite 100% increase over what's allowable. So that's why I would, especially after our MS4 presentation and all the work we're doing to address our stormwater, increased impervious surface is a big part of why we have so many stormwater problems. So I do think it's important that we participate.
Any public comment? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of participating in the motion, sorry for that, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else under that particular item, next under zoning inspections and planning.
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So I corrected, for lack of a better expression, Kurt, that he had skipped over G, and I realized that I forgot to ask Kurt a question during the manager's report. So with everybody's indulgence, can I bring us back to agenda item number 11? Kurt, you and I were talking earlier in the week about some of the steps that are going to be coming up in terms of the possible sale of the sewer, and there's a communication going out. So could you please describe that for the residents so they can know what to expect?
Sure. So today's the 21st. In all likelihood, on or around the 26th, which is next Monday, a letter is going to be coming out. There'll be two letters. There'll be a letter from Aqua and a letter from the township on top of it. And there is a PUC requirement that is based on a court settlement that I will not be able to tell you what it is. That requires all companies, all PUC related companies, to contemplate scenarios that I will call extremely conservative or worst case scenarios for potential rate increases. The feasibility of those increases are immaterial to the process. That asks, for example, in this case, I will say Aqua, to come up with what would a rate increase be that you potentially could have to warn people about and advise them about if these worst case scenarios came to fruition. So there will be a letter coming out from Aqua saying that that rate increase for next year could be 28%. We are putting a cover letter on that because practically, I know we've talked a lot about the PUC process. There's not any way there would be a 28% rate increase next year. Even if Aqua was bound and determined to do it, for them to file, and if they were to file, it would never happen next year. So in the cover letter that we have, we basically outline how this is sort of checking the box for a PUC requirement. And the outline briefly of the bidding process we had, the 2-year rate freeze, what have you, and basically saying to people, this is an obligation they have under a PUC checklist from a court settlement. And I will also say one of those other criteria that they have to contemplate would be, remember, if you're going into a larger pool of customers, that also has a certain economy of scale. One of the factors that they would look at would be, what would the rate increase be if for some reason Lower Makefield would not be permitted to go into that larger customer pool? Well, there's not any reason that that would happen. It's just one of the factors that they would have to come up with those worst case scenarios. So that letter will be going out. I'll make sure that we put that out online probably by Friday, along with what our cover letter will be, sort of overviewing, explaining what that letter is. But that'll be going to every ratepayer's household, probably whether it's mailed on Monday or it arrives on Monday. That'll be forthcoming.
Thank you.
Kirk, can I ask about that?
Sure, and then I see you have public comment, so let's get to the supervisors and then we'll open it up to public comment. Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. So Kurt, I just want to be careful about adding anything to a court mandated public letter, public notice. I have to put out a lot of public notices for work that I do, and I am bound to very specific language, and I can't add anything to it. I can't add my own cover letter saying no big deal, whatever it is.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're not violating any court orders or anything else by kind of giving another letter that says, hey, no big deal, but they have to do this anyway. Is that seem?
I've been more
careful about that.
I've been more direct in my description than the letter is. That letter that was put together by staff has gone through legal review for exactly the reasons you just stated.
Okay. What's the timing on the rest? I know it's at the PUC and there's an active docket and all that other stuff. What's the timing on that? Have we gotten any updates on any of that stuff?
On the specific timing, no. I think in the letter that's going to go out that I think I sent to you guys, that is outlined in Aqua's letter that's going to go out, it's going to indicate that they anticipate a PUC decision no later than February, I think they said February 2nd, February 3rd of next year. And I think that they were putting that as a date that they were comfortable with, that they felt that decision would be made. But I do not have a specific time frame from the PUC yet. As soon as we have it, we'll make sure we get that to the board.
That's a little bit later than what we'd originally thought. So
we were talking originally about a late fourth quarter closing date, mid to late fourth quarter. So I think that they've pushed that out a little bit more in their opinion, that was a date that they were comfortable with putting out there, that being from the Aqua letter that's going to be in that's going to go out.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you could have a seat, Zach.
So the projected rate increase is more than double than the indicative rate that they had provided last year when they had provided that. Why didn't they indicate that that was a worst case scenario when they provided that last time?
I don't believe, the indicative rate they have is what will apply and what we will be saying going forward. This is a PUC requirement that has a different calculation that is a worst case scenario with some of the criteria that I had outlined.
It's a fully loaded example. So one of the things that Aqua doesn't really have that many wastewater people. It has a lot of water customers, but it doesn't have a lot of wastewater customers. So the sort of economies of scale isn't quite the same as would it be on the water side. And so as a consequence, their existing wastewater customers would be bearing some subsidies of Lower Makefield residents, which normally we would be in favor of. But unfortunately, there's no guarantee that that's the case. Right? And Aqua didn't provide that last year at all in any way, shape, or form.
I wouldn't have expected them to. When they do their indicative rates, they look at where they believe the rates will be with everything that they use for that market calculation. the letter in regards to fulfilling the PUC requirement isn't so much a market calculation. It is more a factor of all of the factors that I had mentioned.
But that is in fact a plausible outcome.
I would,
although under the
just
prior
respectfully, it's not plausible because there cannot be a 28% rate increase next year. They would never be able to file with the PUC, even if they did,
Right, but
for a
even if
rate
you
increase to happen in February if that was the closing date.
Right, even if you assume their initial plan with what they told us, they would be seeking a rate increase in 2028, right? Which is
No, the rate increase would have been, I think it was 4 years in, so it would have been a potential rate increase in 2025.
2025.
Right. So essentially, what was factored in that indicative bid is that we had a 2-year rate freeze as part of the proposal, and then with following the typical filing timeframes that Aqua has, and the turnaround from the PUC that would have been assumed in there of essentially a 4-year rate freeze until 2025.
So, and then thereafter in 2025 and 2028 would be the 2 times that they would be going to the PUC for increases, right?
Well, if you follow their filing requirements, it would be a filing requirement that would have a potential rate increase in 2025 and then a potential rate increase in 2028.
Which is, yeah, which is what I'm saying.
Which is every 3 years is what the filing is for that.
So the challenge I have is that makes the Aqua bid, even worse than it was last year when it was reviewed. And we're still not at a point where we can say, where even PFM would say that that was the best bid last year. They wouldn't even certify that it was better than Pennsylvania American Water's bid. So in that letter, what should concerned citizens consider in that letter? Because I believe there are things that citizens can do if they're unhappy with that.
Sure. There's a process in there that outlines in the end, and we can put that online, that if a concerned citizen wants to make their opinion known, there is a process to go to the PUC and do so. I believe that is in writing. I don't have those details in front of me, but I believe it is in the letter that is outlined with Aqua as far as what they can do.
So I know there's a letter. There's also a form that you can fill out as well with the PUC. That's not in the letter, right?
No, there would not be a form. There would not be a form in that letter.
But there is a form that the PUC.
I believe that that's correct. Yes, I believe that is correct.
Will that be made available on the website for people if they want to use the form to express their displeasure with the PUC?
That wasn't my intent to put that on there because that wasn't going to be in the mailing. So I was going to put online what was going to be in the mailing that was required. That was as part of the required mailing of the PUC.
Okay.
Zach? Maybe the battery died? What can I tell you, dude? You gotta have your.
Thank you very much. Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. We expect to have closing with the sale this year, 2021. Is that correct?
It's not a guarantee, no.
So it's possible it might be 2022.
Could right
Possibility.
now. It is possible. So I just want to make sure. So the letter that outlines that Aqua outlines in the letter says that they would expect a decision on or around February 3rd.
Of
2022.
22.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And part of the agreement of sale, the rates for the ratepayer would be flat for 3 years, correct?
Said a 2-year rate freeze. But what the bid said was a minimum of a 2-year rate freeze. What we had outlined in the indicative bid that was what the requirement was with the bid documents, was a minimum of a 2-year rate freeze. Aqua had outlined a rate freeze longer than that based upon the timing of their PUC filings and the turnaround time, even if a rate increase was sought, of when that would happen.
Okay. Well, my memory is that when we made the sale, they said the rates would be flat for 3 years.
No, it was
and
2
the
years.
first increase would be 2024 at $70.97.
So
right. So if it's 2022, I do believe it was a 3-year. That would be 2025.
So,
We would have a freeze till.
so the indicative bid
Yeah.
and the bid outlined and anticipated a 2021 closing. So in the indicative bid, it talks about the rates being frozen for 21, 22, 23, and 24.
Okay.
Okay. And so the bid requirement had set a minimum of a 2-year rate freeze. When Aqua put their bid in on the assumption of a 2021 close, it included those 4 years that I had mentioned. So in the end, it fulfills a requirement of a 2-year rate freeze, and it still factors in the number if the filing followed with the every 3 years I was talking with Supervisor Lewis about, that would not have a rate increase until 2025.
Okay, and these were just approximates, right? There's no legal document to say we must hold them to what the indicative bids were, correct?
The bid talks of a 2-year rate freeze as a requirement of the bid. Yes, it says a 2-year rate freeze. If they decided to go to the PUC earlier than that,
Yeah.
that would be inconsistent with when they've done the filings, the timing of the filings. But the document talked of a 2-year rate freeze.
Okay, so that's it. I'm just when they bid, they said by the end of the period, 2030, it'd be $96
Correct.
a month,
Mhm.
which is a 35% increase from what they started at.
From 10 years, right.
Okay, in 10 years.
Mhm.
Now, if the PUC grants them higher increases, can we hold them to that figure that?
No, that was indicative.
So
no.
that is just an you're saying
It was
indicative.
for all of the
Words
bids,
appro-
for
is
all
an
of
approximate.
all of the bids, it was an approximation.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zach. Is there any other public comment? Okay, thank you all. And with that, David, your turn again, zoning hearing board. Not yet. Sorry, 14 zoning inspections and planning.
Yeah, the first matter here, and I don't know if Mr. Showalter is present virtually and or his applicant. There we go. This is the consider approval of a lot line change for JD Signature Homes at 936 Sandy Run Road, plan number 683. Just to orient everybody to where this property is located. It's on Sandy Run Road near the split where Sandy Run and College Avenue split. It's just south of that split on the east side of the road. I believe I'm orienting it correctly. Thank you. Must be Jim helping us with that. Yeah, you can see where the top of that photograph that's on the screen is north, and the road to just to the left of the line of the red box there is Sandy Run Road. So there is a representative from the applicant here. Not sure who it is, but I'll be glad to.
Yeah, hi, it's me, John DePasquale from the law firm Faegre, Drinker, Biddle and Reith, and my client, John DePasquale, who's the principal, and also my dad is here also.
Well,
family affair.
Congratulations to both of you. Mr. DePasquale, if you want to proceed, just briefly describing the project and what I do normally. In fact, I sent a letter, proposed approval letter to Mr. Showalter. Had I known you were doing that, I would have sent it to you as well, so I apologize. But I have a proposed approval letter, which I will read into the record as a motion once your presentation is completed. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I did get and have a chance to review your letter. So
okay, there's a couple typos that I will correct on the fly here tonight too. So.
Okay, that's okay. So we own this property. The owner's JD SH Sandy Run. Existing on the property now is a house that's outdated and is really uninhabitable. It's sort of falling in on itself, and it's non-conforming. It's very close to the street, and it's extremely close to the existing lot line. What we realized is if we, thank you for putting the plan up. If we moved the lot line, we actually could create two very nice conforming lots that would be more desirable than the existing setup where the existing house is. So what we did is we went ahead and we put footprints and the basic development elements of these lots on a plan, and we submitted for a lot line adjustment. We made our presentation to the planning board, and we made a few waivers, few waiver requests for sidewalks, which was granted, for road widening, which was granted, and for street trees, which were granted. There was one waiver request that was not granted, which was related to the tree ordinance. This particular plan doesn't depict it, but there are 6 trees that need to be removed. One of them is on the southern border of the property, and it is in questionable health. Oh, here we go. You'll see a tree with an X on the southern border of the property. That's a pine tree in questionable health. You have a few other trees. There's 2 or 3, the 3 in the northern part of the property, which are smaller maple and dogwoods. And then the 2 in the center of the property are 2 somewhat larger. I think they're maple trees. The 2 or 3 trees on the northern side of the property really seem like they were a prior owner's landscaping tree that just was overgrown. The tree on the southern border seems like it's in poor health. This isn't a wooded lot. These are really landscaping trees. So we had requested a waiver from the planning board from the tree replacement requirement because removing these trees, they told us that we needed to put 24 trees on these 2 lots. There's not a lot of room for 24 trees on these 2 lots. And we sort of got the bad end of the deal because had we just done a subdivision, then come in with 2 individual building permits, we wouldn't have to, this requirement wouldn't necessarily be there, but it is there. We have it in front of us. So we're looking to deal with it. The rub really hits the road here. We're going to plant trees. We probably think we're planning to do 10 to 12 trees, depending on the desires of the eventual homeowners that buy these lots. We don't exactly know where these trees will be. They may be on the rear as a buffer. They may be down the new lot line. So we're thinking 10 to 12 trees will be on this lot, and we think that's actually a generous amount of trees. It's more than a 1-to-1 replacement of the existing trees. And I saw on the agenda, there's also a discussion later tonight about the tree ordinance. I don't know if it's about this, but I'd be interested to hear that. When we brought up the issues that we're having with the replacement trees and asked for the waiver, the Planning Commission's reaction was more or less bring it up with the Board of Supervisors. So here we are. We appreciate the letter that Mr. Truelove prepared. I was looking through it, and on item 9, which addresses this comment, he says, to replace with 24 trees or alternatively payment to the township in an amount as determined by the township as a fee in lieu of planting the otherwise required replacement trees. I'm here today to say we accept the resolution and the conditions of the resolution, but I guess we're looking for it, and we're looking for it in a waiver request for these additional trees, or perhaps a wait and see approach to see what trees do the buyers for these lots actually want and where do they want them? Because as everyone knows, we could end up putting trees on these lots, and then the individuals who buy the lots could decide they don't want the trees, and a year after the conveyance, they could take the trees down. So we're just trying to come up with a smart solution to put more than a 1-for-1 replacement of trees on this lot. So that's why we're here in front of the Board of Supervisors, and that's why I wanted to bring this up in public comment rather than just simply accepting the resolution as is. We don't have any other comments to the resolution.
And Mr. DePasquale, as the one condition indicates, if you're not willing or want to plant the actual trees as indicated, there is the fee in lieu option. So that would be the other option you heard tonight, what the that amount would be. So for example, if you planted the 12 you talked about and you still had 12 left over, you didn't pay, it'd be 347 times 12. My math isn't that good, but it's going to be around $4,500, I think, or something like that. So I believe. So that would be, just to give you an idea. And I will also 4164. I was a little bit high. That's 12.
You're close. So. You're close.
Anyway, so I'm going to read the letter and the motion as if that condition is still there. Obviously, if the board decides after the motion is made to amend it in accordance with your request or something like that, they can do that as part of the discussion. So let me read the motion into the record first. And then we can start to have a discussion if we have any questions about it. So, and this is the
Sure.
fun part for everybody to hear this. So,
I
all
just
right.
have one procedural question. Will there be
Sure.
a back and forth, or is my turn to speak essentially up at
Oh,
this
no, I think what I would think is the board members may have questions for you.
Okay.
So this is just to get this before the board and in the minutes as something that then will lead to the discussion. That's just, it's procedurally, that's how we want to get started. The letter and the motion actually start that discussion, although your presentation was a good prelude to that. So that's.
Okay, very
that's,
good. Understood. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Excuse me. So this is for 936 Sandy Run Road, Plan number 683, a lot line change and grading review. Bucks County Tax Map parcel numbers 20-025-014 and 20-025-014-003. The Board of Supervisors of Lower Makefield Township will grant the request, subject to these conditions, for a lot line change, which may enable conceptually for the construction of 2 new single-family dwellings in each new lot, a conforming lot, I would indicate, as you indicated, as submitted by your firm in the above referenced matter. The plan proposes to modify the lot line between each of the 2 above referenced parcels, demolish the existing 2-story house on one of the lots, and to construct a single-family dwelling on each new lot as a result of the lot line change. Also proposed the stormwater management as part of the connection to Sandy Run Road. Subdivision plans submitted to the township include 1, a lot line change plan, 6 sheets dated May 14th, 2021, is prepared by R.L. Showalter and Associates, Inc. Secondly, a stormwater management report dated May 14th, 2021, is prepared by R.L. Showalter and Associates. Next, a waiver request contained in the May 20th, 2021 submission, a letter from R.L. Showalter and Associates. All those aforementioned plans as outlined above are hereinafter referred to as the plan. Review materials consist of the following: June 7th, 2021 Remington and Vernick Engineers Review Letter, June 23rd, 2021 Safe Engineering Review Letter, at June 18th, 2021 Bucks County Planning Commission Review Memorandum, a memorandum from the Lower Makefield Township Planning Commission, which I haven't seen yet, but I have a anecdotal report from my partner Barbara Kirk from the July 12th, 2021 meeting, and I believe there was also a review of the fire marshal, which I'll have to refer to here as well as part of this. But unless otherwise addressed during the approval process, the approval of the plan is subject to all the terms and conditions contained in this letter. And I'll go through that in just a second. And those conditions include, if required, you shall obtain beyond appeal all necessary and/or required variances from the zoning ordinance, or in the alternative, you must revise the plan so that it's fully compliant with the zoning ordinance. Second, in addition to the foregoing, you shall comply with the requirements set forth in the above referenced Remington and Vernick Engineer Review Letter. Third, you shall comply with all requirements and determinations of the township's traffic engineer as set forth in the safe engineering letter referenced above. Next, you shall comply with the requirements and determinations of the Arleigh Makefield Fire Company, including but not limited to all requirements and conditions as more fully set forth in the review letter dated June 7th, 2021, which I'll include in the items above. Next, you shall comply with all requirements and determinations of the Bucks County Planning Commission as set forth in the above reference memorandum, Next, you shall comply with all requirements and determinations of the Lower Makefield Township Planning Commission, including but not limited to all requirements and conditions as fully set forth in a memorandum which will emanate from the July 12th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Next, you shall pay all required fees as applicable as set forth in the ordinance unless noted otherwise, and as determined by the township prior to the recording of the final plan. And 9 is the one that you mentioned. Unless otherwise noted, you shall be responsible to plant the required replacement trees as 6 trees of 10-inch caliper or more to remove from the property. Accordingly, each tree that is removed requires that 4 trees of 3-inch caliper be planted on site for a total of 24 trees, or alternatively, payment to the township in an amount to be determined by the township as a fee in lieu of planting the otherwise required replacement trees. And as you probably heard tonight, that amount is now $347 per tree. Next, if applicable, you must obtain any and all necessary approvals from any and all other applicable governmental entities having jurisdiction over this project, including but not limited to the Lower Makefield Township Traffic Safety Officer and the PADEP. In addition, as requested, the Township Board of Supervisors, and we anticipate will grant waivers. Again, this is part of the motion from the following requirements of the ordinance. This is the Saldo ordinance. Number 1, waiver from section 178-40.C of the ordinance from widening the existing cartway of Sandy Run Road in order to be consistent with the surrounding roadway network to minimize impact and to maintain the existing roadside swale. Again, this is a recommendation from the Lower Makefield Planning Commission as well. 2, waiver from section 178-47 point capital A of the ordinance to require sidewalks along either side of the street for safety and convenience. As no sidewalks exist on Sandy Run Road in this area, the waiver is granted. And the third waiver recommended by the Planning Commission, which we've included in this letter, is waiver from section 178-81 capital A of the ordinance requiring that street trees shall be planted along both sides of all streets where suitable existing street trees or natural wooded areas do not exist. So what we would do, that would be a motion, and then after discussion, if you accept those conditions, I'll be asking you that before the vote is taken. So is there a motion to incorporate the letter that I just read into the record as a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Second.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
And now discussion can occur. And go ahead, Mr. Lewis. If whoever wants to go first, I'll defer to you.
Chair Blumey.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I made the motion pretty straightforward here. You're getting a great deal. You don't have to put sidewalks in, and don't ask for the tree replacement fee waiver. If you ask for the tree replacement fee waiver, if you do, I'll vote no. Just save yourself some time, get done quickly. You got my vote, but if you ask for the tree replacement fee waiver, the answer is no. Is that clear?
Clear. Can I
Excellent.
propose an alternative?
No. You've gone through the process, you've gotten a good deal, and now you're asking to negotiate again. And I'm telling you, I'm going to give you the deal you had.
Excuse, as the applicant, I just want to interject one thing.
What?
We're on here for the same time as the tree fee just got jumped on us right before we got heard. So let's just be a little open to some understanding and maybe just hear us out a little bit before you. We understand you're very adamant about it. We appreciate that. But just hear us out. Just hear us out just for a minute.
And I certainly have been very flexible. I got to tell you, the number of times developers have asked to get out from under this. There was one developer who got over $125,000 of corporate welfare by basically getting out from under the tree fee.
Okay, well, we're not that kind of.
I know we're talking about $4,000, but the moment we start, if we're just, like I said, I'm giving you a quick yes.
No, and I appreciate that, but let's understand, This is not a wooded site. We're not like clear cutting woods. There's no forest. There's no like major trees. These are a couple of landscaping trees that were planted 50 years ago that outgrew their health, safety, and welfare. So we're not, it's not like I'm clear cutting a forest to put 2 houses in. They're basically vacant lots with a couple of landscaping trees that are overgrown that should have been taken down years ago and they didn't.
Right, but you went through a process. Our solicitor drafted what appears to be a very detailed letter.
We had this conversation with the Planning Commission, and they kind of got stuck on it because they saw the plight, they saw the reality, and that there's an ordinance, and the ordinance is very fair. And I totally look. If it were a clear cutting of a forest in an open area, you wouldn't get an argument from me because I'm not that kind of guy. But I'm looking at it as a pragmatic person and said, if I came in for a building permit on one of those lots right now and sat in front of you, first of all, I wouldn't be in front of you. I'd just be getting a building permit and I wouldn't have to replace one tree, not one, not a single tree.
Yeah,
but because I'm trying to do something that makes everybody's life better, including the townships and everybody's, by making conforming lots that make it less problematic for variances and stuff in the future, hopefully, because we've downsized the houses. So there's more area for people to do their patios, decks, and pools. I feel like the ordinance, because it's a lot line change, isn't really a subdivision. I didn't get one benefit by doing this subdivision, not one, other than 2 nicer lots than one really nice lot and one half-ass lot. And because of that, I'm going to get this tree ordinance thing, and I'm going to have to pay extra dollars for something that I didn't ask for 3 lots. I didn't ask for 6. I have 2 existing tax parcels, and I still have 2 existing tax parcels. So while that's all good, at the end of the day, I'm not getting one single big benefit. Look, the street trees, there are no street trees in that neighborhood anywhere. There are no sidewalks, and I get that. But pragmatically, there's been other people that have done stuff in that area, and they haven't done any of that either. So we're talking about a couple $100, couple $1,000. But I'm also trying not to get these houses to go over $1 million. I'm trying We are very pragmatic in that we are trying not to be the big $1 million builder. We're trying
Mr.
to
Di
build-
Pasquale, if I could jump in there, Mr. Ferguson and I were having a side conversation because your application was made before tonight's change in the dollar value per tree. I think the old number would apply, be the 315, not the 347, if that makes a difference to you. And that's a reduction of $768 from the other number that we had quoted. So it's $3,400, something like that.
So so let's discuss.
And I will, but you say you're not getting one benefit. I'll just point out, you're able to build arguably at some point 2 houses instead of 1.
Right.
So.
Okay, that's you know what?
And before you continue, because I did get a chance to see you at the planning commission, you indicated that prices, you don't want to, so the $3,400 we're talking about, that's going to make you sell $2 million houses.
No.
Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about something that's very important to this township. Supervisor Lewis tried to be as direct as he could with you to tell you this is a really important issue to us, and yet we continue.
I understand. I guess the question is that I'm stuck in a tight spot here, and it's not about the money. It's really about the trees, and it's a conversation of I don't want to have to pay for trees and then all of a sudden have customers want me to plant trees, and now I've paid for trees twice. So I'm asking the board, I'm asking for somebody to tell me, how do I accomplish the goal where I can give the people buying something that they want and not have to pay twice for it? Is really ultimately what we're talking about.
But you're not really paying twice for this. So you have the option to pay the fee in lieu and you're out. And if you don't want to plant trees, fine, they'll get planted somewhere else in the township. I guess I have a problem here. You negotiated with the planning commission and the entire Saldo process, and everybody came along and worked through a nice agreement. And now you decide that, oh my gosh, I want out from this like $3,000 on 2 $1 million houses. I think we're sub less than 0.5% here, right?
No, respectfully, we raised it with the planning commission and they said, bring it up with the board of supervisors. So we bring it up here.
Well,
Okay,
because
and they knew
they
exactly.
denied you. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I did watch it, John. And because they denied you, they said your relief would be here. So it's not like they were like, oh, go ahead. They told you.
Yeah, right. They told us to talk to you about it. So
Thank you.
I think the bottom line is just from the logistics of what our customers want and the construction of the property. If we could take a wait and see approach, because we very well may plant many or most of these trees, we'll be happy to make it even by the time the CO is issued. But we're looking for just some practical flexibility in how it's applied.
Well, both Jim and Supervisor Grenier, I think, have comments that may help. So I'll defer to one or both of them at this point. So what do you guys go?
Oh, wait for Supervisor Blundy to tell us.
I'll jump in then. Basically, the way we often handle this is that we can defer the exact amount of the fee or number of trees to be planted to the time of building permit. So when you have a buyer and you go to apply for a building permit, at that time, if they would like to have trees planted, you plant the trees. And any trees that are not planted, then you pay the fee in lieu. If you get a buyer who doesn't want really any trees, then you'd pay the full amount or whatever you did not plant. And that's how we can address that, I believe, would address your concerns.
I think
the other option would be that you have, and I think that's probably the most practical, but it would be to have the 24 tree times 315, that number held in escrow, and then if you plant a certain number of trees, then some of that will be paid back to represent that amount. Either way, I don't think the township is going to be burdensome to you, but I think to Supervisor Lewis and Supervisor Bundy's points, this is something that's a long-standing and very important part of the land development process for the township. And by the way, not that either of you know this, but there's actually a case on appeal from the township right now, so we have to be very consistent about how we apply these things.
Understood. Very, very much understood.
So,
Go ahead, Dan.
yeah, Mr. Trulove, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to recommend an escrow amount that we could hold and depending on what the net is in terms of number of trees versus the fee, work it off the escrow and then refund if you plant some. If not, then we essentially keep it. We go from there. relative to getting relief in terms of the actual fee or replacement, I'm very inflexible about that. We've had many developers and their attorneys come in, have the same, much bigger developments typically, as you know, and cry poverty over some trees, and it's always the same story. I work in land development. I know better. A lot I'm not sure about the street tree versus replacement tree waivers. Why we'd be getting one on street trees. I don't know that I'd be in favor of that waiver. Sidewalks, I get. Normally, I would say keep sidewalks in because eventually we'll connect sidewalks. I don't like giving away sidewalks. That's another one that we commonly hear from developers who say, oh no, there's no sidewalks around here, so we should never do it. Well, that's why we have no sidewalks in this town, because for the last 40 years, every single developer came in here and said, well, there's not a sidewalk connecting there now, so we shouldn't have to do one. And now we're paying for it in reverse by putting in new sidewalks that should have been put in 30 years ago. So I'm not as, I don't give you a whole lot of flexibility on that when you argue that case. In this case, Sandy Run is a narrow road. It is near college in this area, which could eventually have a sidewalk connecting it to the borough. So I would want to consider that at some point. The other, Jim, I'm going to ask you on this one because I lost power for the planning commission meeting. Otherwise, you would have had to deal with me then too, because I'm the liaison. So I wasn't able to zoom in on that one. The first waiver is it's a little weird in the letter that I'm reading from the BCPC, in that they start talking about requested waivers, but they don't give the first waiver its own bullet point in terms of widening the existing cartway of Sandy Run. Can you explain that one a little bit, just to be sure we're clear on that waiver request?
I was not at the planning commission meeting. However, the ordinance requires that the road be widened to a consistent cartway width. That would be, let's say, a 28-foot wide road, something like that. In this instance, in order to be consistent with the remainder of the surrounding area, and our traffic engineer even commented on this in their review letter, they were in favor of that waiver, and that the more consistent cartway width with the adjacent properties would make more sense in this instance.
So this is just asking to not have to widen it to what we would normally require because the rest of the road is not wide enough to begin with. Is that fair?
Well, I believe our traffic engineer thought the road was wide enough. Obviously, it's been in service as a road for a number of years without any incidences that we're aware of. But to widen one little section that then have on either side, have it narrow back in, actually just isn't.
That makes it more awkward than anything else. I get you.
Yeah, that just so you know, Mr. Supervisor Grander, that is what Mr. Rajewski just described is exactly what happened at the Planning Commission, according to the notes from my partner who was there. It's exactly that. The road is of a certain width. To make it the normal cartway width would be an awkward expansion that's wouldn't serve any helpful purpose, I guess.
For a new driveway cut, do they have enough? That's a weird bend in the road there, right? Is there, for a new driveway cut that they would have to get, does that present any sightline issues?
We're using the existing driveway for the one house. It works. We made it work, so we don't have to add any additional access because it just fit really nice. We have to add one other driveway for the other house, and that's it. So I don't believe there was any site issues.
And by the way, the agenda says this is a lot line change. It is a lot line change, but also grading review and subdivision review as well. So I think that's important for that to be.
Yeah.
Noted.
Jim, what do we have for the plan? I'm not sure on the plans here. Are there any other natural resource setback issues on this? I know across the street there's a big floodplain issue, but here, do we have any? Doesn't look like we're in the floodplain. Didn't see any streams, any wetlands or steep slopes or anything like that over here.
There are steep slopes on the property that were identified on the plans. And I believe they're in compliance with all of our ordinances for those resources.
All right, so personal opinion, let's see. So essentially the motion that we're considering then, just so I'm clear, is to grant them 3 of the 4 waiver requests, but not the replacement tree. Or I'm sorry, 4 of the 5 waiver requests, but not the replacement tree waiver request. Am I correct on that one?
Three of 4, you're correct the first time, yes. So the replacement tree one is the one that is not being recommended to be granted. But again, and the practical implication of that is, as you've pointed out and others, is that that can be, there is a way to work with the developer and the township to come to an accommodation as to how, if there are trees planted that are consistent with the ordinance, and then there's a balance left, that number can be worked out either through the permitting process or through an escrow process somehow.
So in that, the street trees, that's one of their waiver requests, right?
Yes.
In our tree ordinance, when you plant replacement trees, the old ordinance from way back would make you do both in terms of number crunching, but we revised that, I think last year, the year before, to give you credit for street trees if you had to do them. Why are we giving a waiver for street trees if we're going to be if we're concerned about trees? I would just assume not grant that waiver, so we get all the trees that we should be getting.
Well, in part, the power lines are right there.
That's not. Can we do them in a, power lines usually need about a 10-foot easement. So we just plant them outside of that 10-foot easement, and would they still be considered street trees, Jim, if we plant them outside of that 10-foot easement?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are some other issues there. I know they have utility lines, they have the water line to the house, the sewer line, and I believe Mr. Poco can address that. He was at the Planning Commission meeting and was involved in those discussions.
Okay, so but before we do that, Jim, when we have conflicts with street trees, specifically street trees because of other utilities, that may be a conflict, right? In our ordinances, do we have the ability to do something creative to it to still get the number of street trees that we might want, like the fee in lieu for replacement trees? Can we apply something like that to the street trees?
There are 2 alternatives for the street trees. One is to do a formal row of trees every 30 feet where it's a consistent spacing of the trees. And the other one is where you cluster trees in groups so that you have some trees, then you have some open area, and then some trees. In this instance, I'm not sure how exactly that works. Maybe Andy could opine on that, but that might be something that they could plant some or all of the street trees in clusters rather than every 30 feet and still maintain proper separation distances from sewer lines, water lines, etc.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. And then getting back to the sidewalks, I know we talked on another recent project over the last, 3-4 months ago, whatever it was. There was a discussion about a fee in lieu for sidewalks as well, if they didn't want to put sidewalks in front of their property. But we could address that through a fee in lieu specifically for sidewalks, so we could tie that into our sidewalk plan, our trail system that we've been talking about for years. Is that something we could do here too? That's for you, Jim. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Or Dave, for that matter. I guess, Dave, that might be for you.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that aspect of it. I don't know. We have to be careful about off-site improvements and things like that. Again, I'm thinking about our Commonwealth Court litigation right now, so I just want to be very very discreet and careful about how I discuss some of these things.
Understood. Yeah, I just remember that one project we were talking about.
That was the
sidewalk
Gomez
easement
matter.
program.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Can we get Andy's, because he's been waiting to respond to one of the points you made earlier?
So I'll handle that with the sidewalks. It was, the planning commission discussed that other project, and it seemed to be that their discussion was that there were sidewalks within close proximity to where that development had occurred. It might not have been on either side of that development, but maybe 2 or 3 properties down, that there were sidewalks in that neighborhood, and thus that's why they felt it was appropriate in that instance and not necessarily appropriate in this instance because there's no other sidewalk on Sandy Run. So I'll leave it at that for the sidewalks. For the street trees, they show they're proposing the underground stormwater management basins in the front of the property, which is not very common, but the grade of the property slopes majorly from back to front. So putting an underground stormwater management system behind the house could lead to issues of infiltrated water from those systems getting into basements. So there's stormwater management basins up front. There's utilities, sewer laterals, water lines, gas lines, potentially that would conflict with street trees. And there's also 3 trees that are to remain that are in the front of the properties that they're keeping. So I believe that would count towards the street tree requirement because they're trees to remain. And I believe that when it was calculated, the diameter of trees required for the street trees, 3 inches in diameter, and I think that there was 8 total trees required, would be a total of 24 inches in diameter. And the existing trees to remain are a 10-inch diameter and 2 7-inch diameters. So it was the design engineers or the applicant's engineer that raised the issue that, well, we're keeping the same diameter of trees for street trees, and thus I believe that's why the planning commission, along with the other issues as far as conflicts, potential conflicts with the overhead lines, the underground utilities, and the stormwater management systems, that's why they recommended that waiver.
All right. So why did I hate underground stormwater management systems for residential areas. They have a lot of the O&M for a private resident just doesn't happen. If we were to move those, make them a more traditional system or a rain garden, put trees around them, we could probably cluster that and get rid of this underground engineered infiltration system that is not preferable for this type of work. I know we've first time we're all seeing it, have a lot of issues with it. I'm inclined to vote against this one. I wouldn't mind sending it back with more comments to see if they could address those issues and then reconsider it. I don't know if that's an option, Dave, or not, but I don't like this.
That's an option, or you could move to table it and then ask the planning commission to reconsider with some of these other comments. That's something you could do too. Or you can continue this, continue it to the next
Consider the
meeting.
motion, right? That's an option still. We have a motion on the table. We could vote on the motion.
Yep, absolutely, sure.
Well, I think when I talked to the design engineer about the underground detention, we did put them up front because we want to make sure that we don't have any infiltration going into the basements from stored water above the properties. Obviously, that's a problem. Doing rain gardens was a problem because of the steep slopes and then having runoff and controlling water in a rain garden. It was determined that the best course of action was to keep the water underground and make sure that we get the best infiltration we possibly could to keep it from going off site only for the fact that it slopes. Because if you understand the rain gardens, they have a tendency to hold the water, try to hold the water a little bit longer, and then you need spillways and you need overflows, et cetera. So the underground was a much more desired choice to keep the water on site and keep it from flowing over and creating bigger issues and less cost.
I do have a concern, Dave, if you could please help me. Are we like crossing over into like zoning hearing now?
Well,
We have-
some of the issues are actually for, yeah, either for variances or for pure, the development part of it, which we're not, there's not been an application yet for the construction of the homes and that kind of thing. So we're ahead of ourselves a little bit in some of that, yeah, I would say.
So we have a motion that addresses what we're supposed to address at this point in time.
Right.
The rest of the issues that are starting now to be discussed are for other points in time. So if there's no further discussion from the board, then I'd like to see if there's any public comment. Any public comment? No public comment? Yes, Supervisor Lewis.
Before there's a vote, so I believe I'm the maker of the motion. So
Correct.
what we're voting on gives the applicant the subdivision and the ability to build two houses, but they still have to come back with the plans for the two houses.
Yes, oh yeah, and comply with the setbacks, buffers, all that other kind of stuff, yeah. And if we get to the point now that the motion is there and before everybody, now Mr. DePasquale, Esquire, DePasquale, having heard the motion, do you accept the conditions as set forth in the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. And that's with the understanding with the replacement tree issue, that
Yeah.
there's a method to work on that, hopefully to everybody's satisfaction.
Yeah, that was our pain point. That solves that for us.
Okay, all right.
Before the vote occurs for the solicitor, for the applicant, there's a former supervisor who watches these meetings, and I will get a call about the sidewalk. So I will get hammered for that personally. So I expect a call, just so that you know, this isn't like cost-free for me here. So just a heads up, people do watch this. They do want sidewalks. They do follow on the tree ordinance. And I gave you a hell of a deal, man. You still took an extra 30, 25 minutes.
And with that, we'll call the question.
I owe you time. I owe you time.
You're damn right.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. The motion passes 4-1.
And Mr. DePasquale, if you have my email address, if you could just email me tomorrow and I will finalize the approval letter and get that to you. All right?
All right, we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, ladies, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is this is not my item, but it's a certificate of appropriateness for 1700 Yardley Langhorne Road, the Dogwood Skate Shop ramp. And I think, Jim, that's yours. Is that correct?
Correct.
Throwing it over to Jim.
The property at 1700 Yardley Langhorne Road is needing to have an accessible ramp into their property in order to have their business. They went to the Historical Architectural Review Board for the recommendation. There was much discussion on this. The ramp comes from the little parking area up into the house and in. I know there was some discussion about how they would work that out. And at the end of the day, the board members voted to approve the ramp with the stipulation that in 24 months, it would be changed to a more historically appropriate material, extend the lattice over to the support pole, and change the railing on the landing to match the ramp. And this is sort of allowing them to open up for business, and then sometime in the next 2 years, be able to do a more permanent solution for the ADA accessible ramp into the building.
We need a motion on that. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to grant certificate of appropriateness for 1700 Yardley Langhorne Road, Dogwood Skate Shop ramp.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Is there any discussion?
Yeah,
Stan?
Suzanne. So I'm the liaison to HARB, so a little more background. Um, the owner put this in without, basically he went to HARB after he put it in. Nobody really likes this ramp at all, but it's a necessity to be ADA compliant and get the doors open to the business. You'll note that the platform that the ramp connects to is not historically accurate. The railing he put in doesn't match the railing of the rest of the house. It's actually PVC instead of wood. There's limited screening. There was talk, I thought they had asked to put in some evergreen shrubs in there too for that 24 months. I didn't see that written in there, but they are very keen just to get this thing out within the next 2 years to make sure that the owner had talked about doing an addition that would not require any ramps. So that's why they were in the next few years. That's why they were willing to accept this ramp as is and let them open the business to that. So that's a little bit of the backstory. They also we recommended. If you remember seeing that lattice on the sort of end of the porch, extending that lattice a little bit to screen just that much more of the ramp from the roadway, so you wouldn't have to see as much of it. But that was sort of the compromise to allow him to get rolling. Yeah, thanks, Jim. So just extend that lattice, basically that whole roof line down to that platform, so you wouldn't have to see so much of it. And they had talked about putting a few shrubs to the left of it in the picture just to screen it some more. So that's a little bit more background, but the idea is to make sure that this is removed within the next 2 years or replaced with something a little more historically correct, let's say. That's all.
Yes, Fred. Yes, Fred.
Dan, 2 years or 24 months?
24 months is what they said. So,
Okay.
Which,
so that'd be 24 months from today, not the end of 2023. I just want to
that's correct. 24 months from the date of our approval.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? This is
Harold, excuse me. Harold Cooper Smith, known as the Green Shirt, 612B Rensong Road, Yardley. I rise, Madam Chair, to demand that the Pennsylvania Democratic Party goes to the next level above you.
Mr. Cooper Smith, I'm happy to see you, and I await your public comment, but right now we're talking about this specific agenda item, which is the certificate of
Apologize,
appropriateness.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. So is there any public comment on the line for the certificate of appropriateness? Okay, thank you. There being none, I call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay. Now, Mr. Cooper Smith, you can come back because we are up to the public comment section.
Go home week when Supervisors in the green shirt I demand that the Pennsylvania Democratic Party reinstate me, whatever that means, because I can't find much on reinstatement petitions. But as a person who is concerned with the thrust of where we're going as a country and as a world, democracy as we know it is under attack. No matter where you look, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Belarus, it's under attack. and it needs to be addressed with the right party, with the right policies. Secondly, capitalism is not functioning as it should. And obviously I can't get into the reasons because I don't have enough time, but it's not functioning for millions of Americans. Now I'm quoting you from the Pennsylvania Constitution, Section 1. All power is inherent in the people. They have at all times an inalienable and indivisible right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they think proper. I'm relying on that and have been relying on that for the last couple of years, while the system, which you are part of, has chewed me up and spit me out, including my wife. It's not right, but it's a reality. And I will continue to fight for the unspoken people who aren't represented by both parties, the Republican. We've just had 4 years of Donald Trump, and Joe Biden's better, but he doesn't get to the 4 main issues that are affecting the country: crime, COVID, cybersecurity, and I can't think of the other one. They're all serious problems that have to be addressed with the right policies. And that is not what you're getting from the U.S. Congress at the present time. So that's where I'm coming from. I demand reinstatement so that I can go to the people and say, here's what we have. Take it or don't take it. In the words of Benjamin Franklin, we've given you a republic. You can keep it. We're doing everything we can to lose it and taking the whole world with us. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment in the room? Come on up, Lee.
It's 247 Truman Way, Yardley. I sent you folks a letter a couple of days ago about what's going on over in the Regency development in terms of the access for emergency apparatus into the northern part of the development, the northern side. So I've been mentioning this for a while now, but it kind of hit the head because I heard that Toll Brothers wants to repave for the final paving in our area. So if there was going to be a change to be made, I figured I should push it a little bit harder. Mr. Majewski responded to my letter very well, and it kind of calmed me down, to be honest with you, and I thank him for it. But there are still things in the design. There are design flaws in the way Toll Brothers put that together. The streets don't meet the NFPA requirements, but to cut through all the nonsense, I have an issue with the access of emergency fire apparatus through that northern entrance. And what I'd like to do, the street is 12 feet wide. It's supposed to be 20 feet wide. I don't think a piece of fire apparatus can turn around it. The numbers say it can. I don't believe it. So what I'd like to do is have a meeting with Mr. Majewski and anybody else who's interested, and get a hold of the fire department and have them run a pumper or an aerial up there and see if they can get in that way. And, I just want to run that past the board. That's what I want to do. I'd probably, if you'll say, okay, I'd probably need a police officer at the entrance to Renaissance off of Oxford Valley Road, because we'll be screwing around. Well, we won't be screwing around with anything. We'll have a piece of fire apparatus there trying to get through that entranceway and see if revisions have to be made. If changes have to be made, we can push it from there. So, I'm coming to the board with that request to see if I can set that meeting up and get this thing over and done with.
Thank you.
That's it? No answer?
Well, it's public comment. It's not public. Let's plan things and make meetings. So we will discuss it and we will further respond to how many Lee letters did we get this week? We're not going to count Mrs. She's going to have a separate tally. But we hear you. It's a serious matter and we will let you know.
No, because, I was told, it's the people in the community are older, and a few minutes in response time can make a big difference. And if, I was telling my neighbors, if we're standing there and God forbid there's an emergency and we see the fire trucks go by, it's going to take them another 2 or 3 minutes at least to get there. And, that can make a difference. So, that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Zach? No. Okay. Any public comment on the line? No public comment? Okay. With that, moving on to agenda item number 16. So I will tee this off a little bit, although most of the talking is going to be done by Mr. Majewski. Are you still there, Jim? You're going to come back? We have a tree ordinance. It has a few different sections. I don't know that I really want to talk about just the ordinance because pieces of it could be missed. And it's ripe for some amendments, some which I think might be a matter of opinion, some which I think are really a matter of policy. But with that, I'll let Jim take over and I'll interrupt him as I feel like I want to. At least I'm honest. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, just to set the table, our tree ordinance has been evolving over time. Back in the 1980s and 1990s, we had developed all sorts of regulations on landscaping and planting for basins, for buffers, for street trees, for parking lot trees. And the tree ordinance was amended back in 2007 and then again in 2014 to require issues like replacement trees for those that are removed during the subdivision land development process, as we just discussed, to add tree bank requirements for those properties where they're unable to plant the replacement trees on the property, updating the plant list. The ones back in the 1980s were outdated, needed to be updated, primarily to go ahead and add native plants as the primary method of tree replacement, and also to update reference to applicable planning requirements and standards that were outdated from the 1980s. However, since that time, based on issues we've observed with tree availability, survivability, we're looking into recommending that the township consider updating the ordinance to come up with some additional items and maybe some possible modifications that I think would benefit all of those issues. One of the first things that we looked at is that currently require that all plants shall be native plants. Now I know I've heard from people that the fact that we don't have a large variety of ornamental flowering trees and shrubs that are native, that are in our list, has been a little bit problematic. I know back in 2007, when they adopted the ordinance that specified native plants, I know at that time I was in favor of having a certain amount of the plants be non-native, just so that you'd have the opportunity to have some species such as cherry trees like those you see going down Edgewood Road in front of the library, and the trees right outside of the township building. They're also a non-native species of trees, but having a small amount of those that are non-native be allowed to be planted, in this case, no more than 20%, to allow a little extra flexibility to sort of make the township a little bit prettier in the use of plantings. Another item that we identified was the size of the street trees. Currently, our ordinance requires 3 to 3.5 inch caliper trees. And an issue that's been a common thread for probably almost every year since we've adopted that ordinance, which goes back before 2007, back to the 1990s, is that a lot of nurseries don't have a large selection of trees that they allow grow to the 3-inch caliper size. So at the end of the day, when our developers in our town are going ahead and trying to plant trees, we sort of don't get the pick of the litter of the trees. Most other municipalities have either a 2 or a 2.5 inch caliper tree as their standard for street trees. And this is something that a smaller tree has a little bit better survivability. They're easy to transplant. And they just, I feel, add a little bit extra benefit rather than the larger trees, which we have a higher death rate. And the caliper measurement that we're talking about, typically it's taken at 6 inches above the ground level if the tree is 4 inches or less. For replacement trees, those that are cut down, those are measured at breast height, so about a 4 foot height. One of the other things is the height of the tree and branching height, which our ordinance currently specifies that they have to follow the current standards for proper tree configuration. That for a certain caliper, you need a certain ball size that's planted. It should be a certain height, with the branching height being properly laid out, that you have a tree that will look nice and be viable. For buffer trees, our ordinance currently requires for evergreen trees a 6 foot minimum height, for shade trees a 14 foot height or a 3 inch caliper tree, for ornamental flowering trees an 8 foot height or a 2.5 inch caliper, and for shrubs a 3 foot height. In this, I'm actually recommending those all be reduced slightly so that evergreen trees would be a minimum of 5 to 6 feet in height when planted, but the shade trees be a minimum of 12 feet to 14 feet in height, with a slightly smaller caliper size of 2 to 2.5 inch caliper. For the ornamental flowering trees, a minimum of 6 feet in height, with a minimum 1.5 2 inch caliper as opposed to the 2.5 inch caliper. And then the shrubs to be not less than 18 to 24 inches in height. And basically, the smaller the tree size, it kind of starts growing fairly quickly. You only lose a couple of years of that immediate impact from the trees, and then it takes off and often performs even better than the larger trees. Another issue identified over time was with farmland preservation. Currently, they've had issues over the years with the maintenance of the buffer. It looks like many of the developments, they placed the tree buffer that was required completely on the farmland side. So as trees die, as trees need to be trimmed, it's a burden on farmland preservation to maintain all of those trees. For the potential for any future development on the couple of farms we do have remaining in the township, should they go ahead and develop and use the farmland preservation aspect of that development, we're recommending that they have a 25-foot buffer width as is currently in the ordinance, but have the planted part of the buffer with trees and or shrubs be on the residential part of the side of the property line. That would put the maintenance on the residents' plate as opposed to farmland preservation, and the residents could better maintain the trees that are on their property. And if they choose not to have the trees, they eventually could take them down if they would like. And then to have the chain link fence not on the property line, because that would imply shared ownership, but just to be placed at the property line. So it would be on the farmland preservation property, and the farmland preservation would maintain their own fence. And then the remaining 15 feet of the 25-foot buffer would be on the farmland side of the property, and that'd be planted in grasses or wildflowers. And that's kind of keeping in standard with the way the farmland buffers are recommended by the state and the agricultural department. And then for buffer trees, one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that native species not listed and native cultivars may be used with prior approval of the township's plant expert, and that all required plants should be native plants with the exception that not more than 20% of required ornamental flowering trees and shrubs may be non-native species, subject to the approval of the township. For street trees, for shade trees, for evergreen trees, we don't seem to have a problem with getting a lot of native species, but for the flowering trees, the ornamental ones, it seems like most of the trees that I've seen in developments, they plant the eastern redbud tree, which is a very nice tree. I'm just a little concerned that the overabundance of one species of tree may be problematic if we ever have a blight similar that they had, like the emerald ash borer, stuff like that. I know the cultivars was something that had been discussed with the EAC, and to that end, we looked at what other trees are out there that we could expand our native plant list. We currently have Exhibit 1 in our ordinance that has the native plants. On this section, we have, I think, like 13 flowering trees that are acceptable to the township. I looked further into what surrounding areas are doing, and I came upon the Lancaster County Planning Commission. They actually developed a Pennsylvania Native Trees and Shrubs Landscaping Guide. And this has a number of additional trees that weren't on our list, so we could expand our list of native trees. And I believe that this would be a good guide as a starting point. It actually even has more guidance on what the trees are good at. And the Lancaster County is in the same region that we are in. We're both in the Piedmont region. Lower Makefield actually straddles the Piedmont region and the Atlantic Coastal Plain. And this list of plants would also be suitable for the township. Some different trees that they have listed on there are the like the shadblow serviceberry and the juneberry and the smooth serviceberry. And there's a graphic of the trees right here. A lot of them are like multi-stemmed trees that are suitable in a lot of areas. And they have nice flowers. Some of them have fruits and other things that make the native plants desirable. Here's a picture of the eastern redbud. If you ever go down Route 532 through Washington Crossing, when they did their trail project about 15 years ago, they planted the eastern redbuds, and in the spring you can see them all fleshed out with the pink flowers. And they're not a very large growing tree, but they look good in many areas. And then of course we have the flowering dogwoods. Not all dogwoods are native ones. There are certain species that are acceptable. This is obviously a nice landscaping tree that can be utilized in our current ordinance. And there's other trees such as the wild plum, and well, that's it actually. So if anyone has any questions, I can.
So I don't have questions per se, but as Jim mentioned, the EAC is, we talk a lot about trees. We talk about them because we're planting trees, we're reviewing tree plans. There's some belief that the concept of cultivars is more liberally embedded in the various ordinances, and we could debate what a cultivar is. I keep calling them carnivores, but whatever. Bringing clarity to what is a native and what is an option. It's even been suggested by members of the EAC that maybe we want to amend the ordinance to include what not to plant. You mentioned the ash, Jim, which I think actually might be native. Certainly we've recently gotten some emails about the tree of life. So there's lots to be done in this area. And I think it's something, after we discuss, I'm hoping we could say, let's turn it over to the EAC and get their feedback so that we can have a robust revision to these important issues. Anybody else want to talk about trees? Dan.
Sure. So this is, obviously, I've been involved with the tree ordinance for a long time, and this is my field of study. To your, Jim, the size, switching out the sizes and all that based on what's available and what does well, I think all that makes a lot of sense. I've probably had to purchase or plan for 2 million trees in the last 5 or 6 years. So I know what's available and what's not, and where it is, and et cetera, and what works and what doesn't. And sometimes a slightly smaller caliper tree, slightly shorter, which means slightly younger, does do better than some of the much larger trees, because honestly, they can put more energy into growing, root systems and whatnot than they do to have to initially deal with the stress of the above ground biomass. So all that makes a lot of sense, and I would be supportive of that. Where I am 150% opposed is allowing for any cultivar or non-native flowering tree. I can't say enough. That's something in my world I can't do. I can get fined. I can get all kinds of different things if I ever planted any of those trees. Now, and the reason being is a cultivar is a cultivated tree that is genetically different from a native species. Lots and lots of studies from the Society of Restoration Ecology, Ecological Society of America, Bureau of Land Management, all kinds of groups that do this every single day, that show how cultivars are genetically variant and persistent, which is dangerous from an invasive perspective as compared to native trees. So some species that folks have used in the past because they wanted something that was a little more, at least from their perspective, they thought was a little more aesthetically pleasing, would be purple loosestrife. A lot of people like bamboo, something called multiflora rose, kudzu, barberry, all these species that people thought would be pretty, and that's really what it comes down to, is they think it's pretty. They're now all invasive species that have taken over much of the landscape, done literally billions of dollars of damage to the landscape, and have resulted in native species that have been put under incredible amounts of stress that have led to things like Dutch elm disease, various emerald ash borer came in. Oh, now we have things like those little bugs we all step on these days, because that's what invasive species do. They outcompete native species, they change the environment, and they eliminate things like very important pollinator species because they're taking away their habitat. Certain pollinators can only survive with very specific species. As crazy as that sounds, some of our most important pollinators are only able to survive with one specific species, and if you decide to plant a cultivar of that, they won't survive, and there goes our agricultural industry. And that's not hyperbole. That's what we're experiencing right now. So I could not be any more opposed to allowing for non-natives, even if they are pretty. I can find you lots and lots of other pretty trees that are native to have the same effect. I understand wanting to be more aesthetically pleasing in the township, but we can do that using native trees. So like I said, I'm definitely supporting looking at alternatives for sizing of trees. That's also less expensive often if we're doing replacement trees ourselves. So that may be an option that helps, but I could never support using cultivars or non-native flowering trees as written.
Yes, John.
So to kind of echo Supervisor Grenier's remarks, a couple things. One, Jim, there's a DCNR list of native plants and species that the state has. It seems like it had a few more things. I didn't see the Lancaster County one, but to the extent we can find exactly all the species that are native that are available to us that everybody says is okay. I honestly, to be honest with you, this is an area where I know almost bupkis, but I don't like invasive species, and so I'm concerned anything that would cause additional invasive species, and I'm of the mind that we want to be very, very, very protective of that. And I'm now reading things like bioscience, which is not something normally would be in my reading materials, but even minor what are perceived to be non-invasive cultivars can actually be invasive and outcompete, as you say. So that's something we definitely want to worry about and make sure we get right. Again, I'm not an expert on this at all. I can't tell you what a tree, which one is which. I think they all look nice. I'm happy. I rake the leaves sometimes, but we definitely want to get that right. And I also want to see, to the extent we can find as many native plants as possible, big fan of that. It just seems like we always are at this ordinance every 3-4 years. I wish we could just lock it down, but that's all I have.
James or Fred?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Well, as far as I understand about being opposed to non-native cultivars and, invasive species, I can't argue with that. What I would like to see, if we so desire, is to expand the list to include all native species that would be appropriate in this part of the world. I think I had a conversation with you not too long ago. When we talk about native species, we talk about northeastern deciduous forest. We talk about what we find native to Bucks County. I mean, there's room for a discussion and a clarification in the ordinance to allow for appropriate native species to be planted. It just, I think to clarify the definitions would be very, very appropriate.
And if I may add just one thing about invasive species and noxious weeds, our ordinance currently does prohibit that. So anything that is on the state's list is not allowed to be planted. And as some of you may be aware, we've had some complaints recently about the tree of heaven growing around town. And that's something that we do look into and try to resolve.
So Jim, a tree of heaven and bamboo park would be out of the question in Lower Makefield?
That is correct.
Pretty good, friend.
Is there any other public comment? There is someone, yep, okay, can you bring them in, please? See, but those are not currently covered by our list. That's the sad part. Are they here yet?
Just to, as I had mentioned, that
Hello?
this does need to be made specific.
Hold 1 second, please.
me.
Hold 1 second, please, Lisa.
Oh, wait a
Someone's
minute. I
speaking.
gotta turn down my TV.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and the list does need to be specific to our region of Pennsylvania. There's various regions. We're in the Piedmont and Atlantic Coastal Plain physiographic region, and plants tend to do well in their own region. When you get to other parts of the state, you may have a tree that's perfectly fine in central Pennsylvania, but maybe it doesn't work as well here. That's all I have.
Please state your full name and your address for the record.
Yes. Hi, I'm Lisa Tenney at 156 Pinnacle Circle, Lower Makefield.
Go ahead.
Oh, yes. So I do teach biology too at the college level, and I do agree with Board of Supervisor Grenier, and also, yes, Board of Supervisor Weiss. It is a deciduous forest land that Pennsylvania is in, and our location once was prior to development. However, I'm calling, I don't think you should change the existing ordinance without total agreement with the environmental committee, who's composed of knowledgeable volunteer residents. There's no lack of ornamental trees in LMT. Anyone who owns property can decide what kind of bushes they can plant. So I can take you for a tour and show you all the ornamental trees, at least in my neighborhood. And again, the problem is non-natives outcompete native trees, and native trees sustain a wildlife that's different from non-natives, and also help better control the soils endemic in the environment and in the area, erosion control especially. And I've just heard a whole, meeting about the importance of soil and its filtration ability. So, and problems with flooding. So I would really, really take your time and investigate this, because it's worked perfectly fine as it is, and it really is important now and into the future to get it right. So anyway, and there's so many more important things that you should maybe address, honestly, at this point, than fix something that's already pretty perfect. Thank you for serving.
Thank you for calling. Any other public comment? Nope, that's it. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Then we are on to supervisor reports, and I've pretty much brought you up to speed with the EAC. So with that, James, I'm sorry, Dan. Do you want to?
No, real quick. If you and or Jim hasn't seen it in the past, I can send you the Bucks County Natural Areas Inventory. That's a state natural heritage program where they do an inventory of all kinds of different things by county. And they do have a list of, a rather long list of native plants that are native to Bucks County specifically. It's actually that's why I was making sure I still had my copy of this book, Plants of Pennsylvania. It's sort of the botany Bible of the state. It's taken from this. It's the same authors. Don't hold it against them. They were my botany professors in grad school, but they're out of Morris Arboretum. So that's a great, probably the most comprehensive list of native plants in the county and the state.
Yeah, as we started out the discussion, right, this issue has come to the surface because of concerns of the EAC as well as farmland and staff. So to the EAC it will go, and how it comes back, or when it comes back, or if it comes back, I'm sure they'd love to have all resources available to them. So that being said, back to the supervisor reports. James, you have anything?
Thank you. I do not have anything to report at this time.
Thank you. Fred?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. John?
Nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. Dan?
Only one. The Electric Reliability Committee met, and Kurt, they should be sending you a letter. We've been reviewing the generator list to try and look for trends. We're mapping the generators that have been installed since I think 2013 or 14. And they are going to be recommending that we bring a representative from PICO before the Board of Supervisors in similar fashion to what they did with when Ted Duran from PICO sat in front of them. It was a good conversation, so we'd like to continue that. So that's upcoming. Everything else, all my other committees have actually been discussed tonight in various parts of the meeting.
Is there any other business? Hearing none. Agenda item 19, appointments to boards and commissions.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Sarah Dalbert to the Ad hoc Property Committee.
I'll second.
Thank you, James. Is there any discussion?
Can you see me?
Yes, Dan.
Real quick, this will be 5 members, right?
Yes.
I think. Do we have? We're pretty specific in terms of what the titles, not titles, but what the backgrounds would be for each of the members. and I was driving back from the township building when you were interviewing her, so I missed her interview, unfortunately, but I did read her resume. It was impressive. I'm assuming that she would fall under the community member at large.
I think she actually fits a lot of different categories, but I don't know that we have to answer that until we're, close to the total. And then we would have to see, do we have the right fit? I know we have someone with a background in preservation already. I know we have someone with a background in science and business. So, but if we are lucky enough to get more volunteers, because we're still looking for volunteers, I think that kind of thought may be required. But for now, we're just talking about whether or not we're going to approve her appointment. So is there any other discussion on this subject, I mean? Right, then all those in favor of the appointment, please signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Are you for or against, Dan? I'm sorry, you're a little late to the party.
I raised my hand for
Okay.
the aye. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's 5-0. Thank you very much. Sarah, look forward to getting your letter. And there being no further business before this board, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.